Chapter 831. However, news that made matters worse came one after another. News kept coming from another direction, and all of it was bad news. The entire mainland seemed to have fallen into a state of chaos. Ever since the Seekong and Duanmu families were suppressed, the businesses that the families relied on to survive were facing a terrible situation of falling apart. A portion of them were monopolized by the unfilial disciples who had betrayed their families, while the other portion was controlled by their former competitors or occupied by unknown forces. In short, the two families didn't even have a single shop or business left. They had fallen into a predicament and were almost at the end of their rope. Perhaps it was because they were at the end of their rope that it was even more shocking when there was light at the end of the tunnel. In just a few short days, the entire situation had turned around. All the businesses that originally belonged to the two families that had been forcefully occupied had all suffered a destructive blow from a mysterious force. Anyone who dared to forcibly occupy the businesses of the two families had their heads rolled to the ground without a single survivor. There was absolutely no room for tolerance. On the day of the incident, the leaders of the Seekong and Duanmu families all had witnesses and material evidence to prove that they had absolutely not participated in this earth-shattering incident. The remaining people didn't have the ability to do so even if they wanted to. Although these two families were the most suspicious, it had become an unsolved case. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell with a glance that with the meager strength of these two families, even if they had the intention, they definitely didn't have the ability to do so. Thus, the true force that had taken action was more thought-provoking. Among those forces that had been destroyed, the disciples of the two families who had betrayed their families were the most miserable. All of their corpses were hung up and exposed to the public. Although no reason was given, such a bloody scene was a silent declaration to the world. Also, the partners who had initially responded to the call to never do business with these two families had all been annihilated. In just a short span of 10 days, such unsolved cases had emerged endlessly in every corner of the mainland. Every place was brimming with a bloody rain and foul wind. Every single case and every single one of them was a debt of blood that was too horrible to look at. The ruthlessness and decisiveness of this incident had never been seen before. Those who had taken action had only killed, but they had never given any reason or stated their objective. Vast amounts of wealth and treasures that had been piled up like mountains had all been discarded like worn-out shoes. It was as if they had only expressed one thought: I like to kill, so I will kill. Whatever I want to do, I will do. If you don't have a reason, don't ask me for a reason. As for the reason and purpose, use your imagination to the limit and think about it yourself. Think whatever you want. But all these people that died had a similarity, and that was that they'd once gone against the Seekong and Duanmu clans, framed them, or participated in some schemes against the two great clans. Although the murderer didn't say anything, these dead bodies automatically explained everything. Thus, while the Seekong and Duanmu clans were still in the dark, they unexpectedly discovered that the world seemed to have changed once again. Just a few months ago, he had turned from an aristocratic family into a destitute family that no one cared about overnight. He had been living a difficult life, and there was no reason at all. In any case, all of his clients and partners had resolutely cut off all contact with him, and even further suppressed him. Now, after only a few months, the situation had reversed once again. This time, there was also no reason, and it was equally baffling. In fact, it was even more inconceivable than the previous time. All of his partners and people that he didn't even know had all come over in a single night. First, they had sent huge gifts to express their apologies. Then, they had made a request for both sides to cooperate, and all of them had been very humble and respectful. Even compared to before, when they were like fish in water, they were even more respectful. Those conditions of cooperation were not business at all. They were basically stuffing people with large amounts of money. Everyone had a clear point of view. Even if the 3 Holy Lands were not to be trifled with, they wouldn't easily kill people and confiscate their properties. But these fellows that were doing this right now, with a single word of disagreement, their heads would fall to the ground. Which was more important? Everyone was looking at the expressions of these 2 clans when they spoke. Some of the rich and powerful merchants were now acting like lowly bastards, bowing and bowing. They even had to call the guards of these 2 clans master when they saw them. They were afraid that they would offend them with a little disrespect. Once they offended them, it was as if a calamity would immediately fall upon them. This kind of strange scene caused the 2 clans that had suffered grievances previously to the point where they didn't even have a place to pretend to be grandsons to feel proud and elated. That feeling was simply too comfortable. If a person had never truly lost something, they would never know how to cherish it. If they had never tasted the taste of poverty, they would never know how difficult it was to be rich. If they had never been looked down upon, they would never know how rare it was to be respected. And all of this, to have it and then lose it, and then to have it again, that kind of feeling was even more thought-provoking than living it all over again. And it even caused a huge change in one's mentality. Right now, these 2 clans were exactly like this. If these 2 clans were originally just ordinary second-rate clans, but after this incident, it was as if they were phoenixes reborn from the ashes. They had completely blossomed with a brand new attitude, advancing towards the superclans. And because of the previous incident, the second generation of the clans and the despicable parasites had all been cleared out one by one. Instead, they had become much purer. Their cohesiveness had also become much stronger. It was as if in these short few months of adversity, they had obtained an inexhaustible foundation, and this kind of foundation, in plain words, was poverty after wealth, and the greatest wealth in life was also poverty and lowliness. Only these 2 things were the greatest motivation for people to develop themselves. Or perhaps, poverty was the greatest wealth. A person or a family being poor was not scary. Even being poor for generations was not scary, because they were already used to poverty, used to being down and out. But once you obtained wealth and power at the peak of your glory, you suddenly fell back into poverty and down and out again. That was the most terrible and most miserable thing. And these 2 clans, after experiencing such adversity, stood up strongly again, regaining wealth and power. They really knew how to cherish it more than anyone else. So from then on, the Sikong and Duanmu clans became the 2 clans with the strictest family traditions in the entire continent, and also the 2 clans that developed the fastest. They stood at the peak of the Xian continent's superclans. Many years later, the Duanmu, Sikong and Dongfang clans rose up completely, and each became a giant of a region. Duanmu in the north, Sikong in the south, and Dongfang in the south did not fall. It could be said that this incident, from beginning to end, had only lasted for a year. But again and again and again and again, completely created the 3 great clans. Of course, this was a story for another time. In this incident, there were those who were successful, and correspondingly, there were those who were unlucky. They were those who immediately took over the Jun family's businesses after the Jun family retreated. The Jun family was forced to retreat temporarily, but they had no intention of giving up on their businesses. The businesses that belonged to the Jun family would always belong to the Jun family. After the Jun family retreated, those who were in charge of the businesses were still the Jun family's hardcore supporters. But there was a group of people who believed that the Jun family had no chance of making a comeback. It was as if they seized everything that belonged to the Jun family in a single night. In this turmoil, these people also suffered a ruthless purge, and the purge was the most thorough. For example, the Huang family of Tianxiang. They were the enemies of the Jun family and the Dugu family. They belonged to the illusory ocean of bloods Huang Taiyang. They belonged to a third-rate family. They had wantonly invaded the Jun family's businesses when the Jun family had first secluded themselves from the world. In fact, they had taken great credit in this incident. Their entire family was exterminated, and even the place where their family was located was burned to the ground, and those who took over the Silver Blizzard City's magnificent jewel hall were also killed. In the short span of a month, in just a month's time, the entire Xian continent was plunged into an unprecedented reign of terror, and everyone was in danger. The Yu Tang Empire saw an opportunity when the Jun family retreated, and the Tianxiang imperial family was about to change. Thus, they launched a war. The two countries were at war, but after hearing about this incident, the Yu Tang Empire immediately withdrew their troops. They directly abandoned all the cities that they had previously occupied, and quickly returned to the Yu Tang Empire's territory. They didn't even want their own barracks anymore. Based on a rough estimate, in this 1 month, not including the deaths of the Dongfang family assassins, other vendettas, and not including the war between the two countries, the number of people who died in these inexplicable incidents was no less than 20,000. 20,000 people. This number didn't seem to be much, but these victims were all heroes with profound Xian skills. Among these people, the lowest Xian Qi cultivation was at the peak of Silver Xian. The entire world, from south to north, from east to west, was directly baptized in blood. And this group of murderers, none of them were ordinary people, and they were in groups like locusts passing through the country. Anyone who was related to the events mentioned above was killed without question. Another common characteristic was that they came and went like the wind, and their actions were ruthless. Once they struck, they would immediately flee. When you investigated the east, there were several incidents in the west, south, and north. In the face of such a bloody incident, the three Holy Lands immediately took action. It was unknown how many affiliated families were mobilized, but the moment they mobilized a family, it also exposed the relationship between the family and the three Holy Land. Thus, they followed the clues and found that no one was innocent. This was equivalent to slapping the faces of the three Holy Lands fiercely. Furthermore, it wasn't just one slap, but one slap after another. It was a relentless beating. A few affiliated families were wiped out, and it was just a few slaps. And the most frustrating thing was so many people died, and there were so many mysterious murderers, but no matter how they investigated, they could not find a single one. They could not even catch a single one. This matter caused the people of the three Holy Lands to be infuriated, and at this time, Chrysanthemum City's request for help coincidentally arrived. Chapter 832. A mysterious expert has appeared in Chrysanthemum City. His strength is extremely shocking. With just one move, he defeated the combined attack of 2 second-level venerables and several superior supreme experts. Currently, this group of people has not left Chrysanthemum City yet. This was undoubtedly a target. The most obvious target. If they wanted to make a breakthrough, they could only start from here and follow the clues. Therefore, the three Holy Lands placed great importance on this matter. After careful discussion, the three Holy Lands unanimously came to a conclusion: to be able to defeat 2 second-level venerables in one move, and based on the situation, he definitely did not use the power of heaven and earth. Even a 4th-level venerable would not be able to achieve such a level. Then, based on this person must at least have the cultivation of a saint. It was reported that it was not just one person, but 23 to 24 people. It was said that every one of them was not an ordinary expert. Then, based on this, there was at least one saint expert among these 20-something people. If it was just one person, how would he dare to face the three Holy Lands? And with such a blatant provocation? If they really wanted to deal with such an expert, they had to be careful. What they were facing now was no longer just revenge. Furthermore, the three Holy Lands needed to regain their face. The three Holy Lands needed to establish their might. For 10,000 years, the three Holy Lands had basically stopped moving around in the pugilistic world. It looked like the people today no longer knew how terrifying the three Holy Lands were. They actually dared to do something like slapping a fly on a tiger's head. Therefore, after Mo Wudao consulted the Holy Emperor Palace, the few holy emperors in the palace were all enraged and gave their orders. No matter who the opponent was, they must be annihilated as soon as possible. In order to end the battle quickly and succeed in one move, the three Holy Lands put in a lot of effort. Each of them invited a holy emperor, 3 saints, and 6 venerables. A total of 30 supreme experts from the 3 Holy Lands rushed to Chrysanthemum City in the night. They must use the pressure of a mountain to destroy all those discordant notes in one fell swoop, and they must use the supreme deterrence to re-establish the reputation of the 3 Holy Lands. The 3 Holy Lands had their own considerations for sending such a powerful lineup. Mei Xueyan had already perished together with the 3 saints from the illusory Blood Sea. Jun Moxie had also died in Tianfa under the sneak attack of the Holy Emperor Zhan Mubai. And even the Snake King was involved. This power of vengeance came from Tianfa. Apart from Tianfa, there was probably no one else in the world that was this powerful. It was even more likely that the few remaining seniors of Tianfa had joined forces with Jun Mo Xie's mysterious master to lead the Xian beasts of Tianfa to take revenge. Perhaps this Chrysanthemum City was no longer a trap set by the 3 Holy Lands for the Dongfang family. Instead, it had become a trap set by the Tianfa forest. So they had to be careful. In fact, in the knowledge of the 3 Holy Lands, only when Tianfa and the Ferocious Lands sent out all their elites would they be able to achieve such terrifying results in such a short time. No matter what, they could not be treated lightly, nor could they be fooled by the appearance before them. How could the enemy expose all of their strength in front of others at once? Furthermore, there was an unparalleled villain hidden in the dark, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. He was the real threat. No one had forgotten, and did not dare to forget, that ever since the crazy 9 Serenities and 14 Masters came out of Tianfa and broke free from the seal, there had been no news of him. Right now, the world was in a state of turmoil, and the 3 Holy Lands were being attacked in such a blatant way. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had always been a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. No one could guarantee that he would not take advantage of this opportunity to fish in troubled waters. So, it was absolutely necessary to send out such a strong force. Even the Misty Mansion, which had never cared about worldly affairs, also sent out a team of mysterious experts to cooperate with the 3 Holy Lands' actions. But this team of people made their stance clear. If the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters did not appear, then this group of people would not participate in worldly disputes. Mo Wudao, Huyen Aoba, and the rest of the 3 Holy Lands naturally agreed. If the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters did not appear, with their strength, it would be too degrading if they still needed to seek help from the Misty Mansion, from 4 directions, 40 to 50 experts who could shake the world with just a stomp of their feet set off at the same time. They left their respective bases, and like 40 to 50 deadly arrows, they shot toward Chrysanthemum City with lightning speed and noiselessly. An inescapable net was set up in the entire world. Including Mo Wudao and the rest, they all had a strange feeling. The decisive battle had been brought forward. But for this decisive battle to be brought forward, they had no idea who their opponent would be. The Holy Emperor Palace sent out a message. In another year, it would be the big day of the war for seizing the heavens. They had to settle the matters in front of them as soon as possible, and then everyone would immediately return to prepare for the war for seizing the heavens. Regardless of casualties, regardless of right or wrong. In any case, this was the last battle in the secular world before the war for seizing the heavens. This battle could only be won, not lost. And they had to return with their strength intact. Because if this battle was lost, if these experts were to die in Chrysanthemum City, the 3 Holy Lands would not have enough strength to deal with the war for seizing the heavens. At that time, the 3 Holy Lands, which had enjoyed a reputation for 10,000 years, would become the sinners of history, forever engraved on the pillar of shame. So there could not be any mistakes in this battle. In order to ensure the victory of this battle, the Holy Emperor Palace even secretly sent out a few holy emperors to keep an eye on the movements of Chrysanthemum City. The three Holy Lands had sent out all their elites. They had to crush the enemy with the force of a thunderbolt, destroy the higher-ups of Tian Fa, and completely eliminate any future troubles. Then, with the momentum of this great victory, sweep through the pillar of heavens and expel the strange races, then turn back and encircle the entire continent to encircle the 9 serenities and 14 masters, establishing the position of the 3 Holy Lands in one fell swoop, then instructing the imperial powers of the world to tamper with history, burning and tampering all the previous records, letting the name of the Holy Lands dominate the world, dominating the history books. Since we've done it, we'll do it to the end. The 9 Nether First Young Master had already done something like this once. If the 9 Nether First Young Master can do it, the 3 Holy Lands can do it too. Furthermore, we're doing it for the sake of the world. We've indeed sacrificed and done it. We're heroes. We're heroes. We have the right to enjoy this glory. Furthermore, we're doing it for the sake of humanity. This is a noble slogan, a noble goal, and we're the most noble people. With such crazy thoughts, the people of the 3 Holy Lands finally came out in full force. Countless experts that had always existed in the legends once again stepped into the mortal world, roaming the pugilistic world. With fanaticism, with ideals. The gongs and drums were beating, ready to be triggered. The entire world was plunged into a state of mutual hostility. A heavy and oppressive atmosphere enveloped the entire continent. A storm was brewing. It could be said that the upper echelons of the 3 Holy Lands had already become a little fanatical in the face of such a grand goal and fame, as well as dominating the history books. Or it could be said that they had lost their minds. From a certain perspective, they were already half crazy. And their opponent, Jun Moxie, was stimulated by them to the point that he was also a little crazy under the instigation of hatred. He was also half crazy. Apart from that, there was another complete lunatic who had taken up another force by himself, the 9 serenities and 14 masters. This was a person who had inherited the 9 Nether First Young Master's ambition to conquer the continent as his own responsibility, a complete lunatic. The entire world had already become the battlefield of these 2 half-crazy and 1 completely crazy. The 3 Holy Lands were determined to obtain fame and fortune. For the sake of hatred, Jun Moxie would seek revenge even if he had to die. As for the 9 serenities and 14 masters, he was a madman who would play the game of conquest even if he had to reincarnate 10,000 times. And during this period of time, Jun Moxie was rather leisurely. Or it could be said that this kind of situation was purposely created by Jun Moxie, the most ideal situation. His original intention was to have such a spectacular showdown. The original intention of the 3 Holy Lands was for the sake of the world, for the sake of the people. I know, I understand, and even have a little respect. But I don't care what your original intentions are, and no matter how noble you are, these are not reasons for you to harm me. The war for seizing the heavens is imminent. I, Jun Moxie, know. I also know the serious consequences of losing the war for seizing the heavens, but this is still not a reason for me to suffer in silence. If I can't even take care of my own family and friends, what is there to talk about for the sake of the world? What rights do I have to say that it's for the sake of the world? If you don't take your mission seriously, and use your glory as a reason and capital to do evil and harm others, this young master still doesn't care. I still don't care. If you guys are fine, then every one of us will be fine. But if you don't, then, so what if we all perish together? Motherf ** Kerr, I'm not the only one who dies. What big picture concept, F** CK off. If everyone had the big picture concept, then everyone in the world would be saints. While the 3 Holy Lands were preparing for war, Jun Moxie had already finished his preparations. Or it could be said that he had already finished his preparations before he left Tian Fa. Everything was ready, the only thing he lacked now was the enemy. Jun Mo Xie had a kind of stubborn, almost perverted thought. I just want to live well. I don't have any intentions of harming others. I only want to live freely, that's all I want. If you let me live well, I will naturally return the favor and let you live better. But if you don't let me live well, then no one will have a good time. Why should you let me have a bad time, but you want to have a good time? Comparing people, how much more despicable can you get? It's all King one life. So what if the two bodies of the powerful and abnormally powerful outsiders were joined together? There's still only one King penis. As long as everything went according to your wishes while you were alive, even if there's a flood after death. Even if I, Jun Moxie, die, I won't know even if you dig up my corpse and grind my bones into ashes 10,000 times. But as long as I have a single breath left, no one can think of making me have a bad time. If you make me sad, then you will be even more upset. I guarantee that you will regret it. And I won't regret it. Even if I destroy this planet, this King world is not mine. It's not Earth. From this point of view, Jun Moxie was even crazier than the 9 nether young masters. Today's first chapter has arrived. There are guests at home today, and they're drinking. While I'm not drunk, I'll pass on a chapter first. After I finish drinking, I'll work hard on the second chapter. It'll be a little late, sorry. Chapter 833. At the moment, Jun Moxie was sitting leisurely on a chair with a cup of tea in a very secluded place. He had returned to his original appearance. His whole body was relaxed, and he looked extremely carefree. He looked as if he could cover himself with a quilt even if the sky fell down. He was truly at ease. Opposite him was a worried Dongfang Wenqing, Uncle Dongfang, who was also Master Dashao's uncle. At this moment, Dongfang Wenqing had already forgotten about the grudges between him and his nephew. His eyes and heart were filled with nothing but worry. Ever since Jun Mo Xie had returned and told him of his plans, Dongfang First Master's sighs had not stopped. Even in his dreams, he did not stop, continuing to sigh and groan. Mo Xie, I've thought about it. This matter, your decision, is still too risky. It's not worth it. It's not worth it, Dongfang Wenqing said bitterly. Even if you want revenge, even if you want to get justice for us, you don't have to be so resolute. You have to act according to your capabilities. Now the battle array is fully spread out. But this is like hitting a stone with an egg. We don't even have the slightest chance of winning. I'm really worried. Uncle Dongfang was so worried that his intestines were tied up. Now, he was directly in a dilemma. He did not know how many thousands of times he had cursed himself in his heart. You really deserve to die. You deserve to be trampled on. Wouldn't it have been better to let Mo Xie follow Wendao and Wenjian? He insisted that he follow him and wanted to take revenge on him. Now look at him. I've gotten myself into this mess. Life and death are secondary. But this nephew of mine is so lawless. I know about this but dare not tell others. This is the most troubling thing. Looking at Mo Xie, the situation has been completely unfolded. This battle is unavoidable. Who can I tell? Mother. Won't the old lady be unable to sleep from now on? It's even possible that she will personally come and fight with my nephew. Tell my sister? Ever since the death of her brother-in-law, she had already lost all hope. If she were to tell her that her only child was going to fight with his life again, and it was even a battle that he had no chance of winning at all, God knows if she would collapse again, and fall into a coma for another 8 to 10 years. These two might be the only two people in the world who could dissuade Jun Moxie, but Dongfang Wenqing would never dare to inform them, because he couldn't bear any of the consequences. As for Dongfang Wenjian and Dongfang Wendao, Uncle Dongfang didn't have to ask to know how they would react. They would raise their eyebrows, be surprised at first, and then radiant with joy and laughter, saying, "Good nephew! No wonder he's my nephew. He's a hero and a good son. Uncle is a hero, nephew is a god. How can I miss out on such a crazy grand undertaking? Please wait, I want to accompany my nephew and risk my life. I'll risk my life with whoever doesn't let me go." Thinking of this, Dongfang Wenqing felt powerless. She was on the verge of tears. This nephew of hers was really a standard, thorough, and out-and-out troublemaker, but now he's roasting me on the fire, and I can only bear with it. It's really not a good feeling. What's so risky about it? Uncle, don't worry. Just watch how your good nephew, me, is going to kill everyone in front of me. Just treat it as a wonderful kung fu blockbuster. June Moxie said with a smile. Besides, we only have one head and one life. Who's afraid of who? When I don't have to die, I can jump off a cliff and have an adventure. But when I have to die, I'll choke to death with phlegm. Don't worry about those useless things. If I have to die, I'll die. F***ck it, I'll do whatever I want. Uncle Dongfang had been worried to death for the past few days, but he was almost choked to death by his words. You little beast. How can you talk like that? If something really happens to you, bastard, your grandmother will skin me alive. Then the sun will rise from the west. It'll be strange if your mother doesn't treat me as her enemy. I'll be deserted by everyone. Other than finding a crooked tree to hang myself, I don't have a second option. You little bastard, you bastard. Oh, you're still worried about yourself. Don't worry, it'll be fine. At least you'll be fine. Grandmother is not such an unreasonable person. Besides, I think she's quite considerate of you. She'll save face for you in everything. June Moxie comforted her with a smile. Dongfang Wenqing glared at him and roared with tears in her eyes. Bullsh**t. You're still considerate of me? Save face for me? Your uncle is almost 60 years old. Just last year, she hung me on a tree and spanked me. Save face for me. This is too much. June Moxie was dumbfounded. He didn't expect this dignified uncle to have such an unbearable past. Grandmother was really tough. Dongfang Wenqing sighed for a while. Finally, she stamped her feet and gritted her teeth. Fine, fine, fine. I don't care so much. I know myself. I've thought it through. Anyway, I'm in Chrysanthemum City, so I'll go crazy for once. No. Isn't it just risking my life to accompany the nobleman? Even if I die, I'll still have to face the sky. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, I'll risk my life to bring you back safely. If it really doesn't work, then we'll face the sky together. What's there for me to worry about? Motherf***. While cursing and complaining, she walked out dejectedly, back to her room to sleep. It seemed that Uncle Dongfang had been enlightened this time. Benefactor, you've been enlightened. June Moxie put his palms together and said kindly. Then, his body flashed and disappeared without a trace. He had entered the Hongjun Pagoda, once again entering the Hongjun Pagoda and feeling the thick heaven and earth spiritual qi. June Moxie was so shocked by the scene in front of him that he couldn't help but widen his eyes. In front of June Dashao, Mei Shuyan's snow-white petite body was sitting cross-legged, motionless. A series of crackling sounds came from her body, crisp and continuous. At the same time, June Moxie was pleasantly surprised to find that a small spiritual vortex had formed above Mei Shuyan's head. The huge amount of spiritual qi in the Hongjun Pagoda was crazily rushing towards it, entering the petite body through this passage. She was actually drawing the spiritual qi into her body, turning it into a substance. Mei Shuyan's current appearance could be said to be rather strange. Her body was still in the form of a xian beast, but on top of her head, amidst the dense spiritual qi, there was a vague image of a slender and graceful figure with her hair tied high up in a cloud, that same peerless figure that he hadn't seen in a long time. The heart roams the heaven and earth, the will to defend the universe, to eliminate evil, to cut down the absurd, the heart of the ice god. This was the sign of the second level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Jun Moxie had never imagined that Mei Shuiyan's advancement would be so rapid. He hadn't been away for many days, but the moment he came in, he just happened to bump into Mei Shuiyan's breakthrough. This was too shocking, wasn't it? And from the looks of it, she had already broken through to the new realm, and was about to be completed successfully. Look at her, and then think of the suffering he had to endure when he broke through. Could it be that comparing people to each other really made people die? Jun Moxie couldn't help but sigh. But he didn't expect that Mei Shuiyan's cultivation was already at the 4th level of the Venerable Realm, and she was only a step away from the Saint Realm. Now that she was cultivating again with ease, and with such a heaven-defying skill like the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, if her progress wasn't fast, it would really be unreasonable. Seeing that Mei Shuiyan's progress was smooth, and there was no danger, Jun Dashao, who was originally surprised that the beauty was about to break through, and might suffer the same pain and danger as he did in the past, finally put his uneasy heart back into his stomach. Originally, there was nothing else in his field of vision except for her, and there was nothing else. Mei Shuiyan's body was right under the heaven-earth spirit vein, and the place where she had originally slept was now the body of the Snake King. While Jun Moxie was pleasantly surprised, his mood instantly became heavy. He slowly walked over and sat beside the Snake King. Looking at the beautiful sleeping face, he sighed deeply and said in a low voice, "Qian Sun, why did you have to suffer that day?" Sigh. Such feelings, such intentions, how can I, Jun Moxie, bear it? How can I repay it? The Snake King didn't have any reaction, and was still in a deep sleep. Although his breathing was stable, and his life was no longer in danger, there was no sign of him waking up. Jun Moxie sat in a daze, sitting under the tree, sitting beside the Snake King. On the tree, specks of starlight shone down, and quietly landed on him and the Qian Sun Serpent Queen. Dashao's eyes were misty, and he didn't know what he was thinking. His heart seemed very calm, but also very chaotic. He seemed to be thinking about a lot of things, but also seemed to have nothing worth thinking about. In this place there were 2 of his lovers. One of them had been beaten back to her original state for him and his family, and was still working hard to cultivate. The other one, because of a moment of carelessness on his part, had fallen into an eternal slumber, never to wake up. All of this was because of him. At home, there was also Dugu Xiaoyi and Guan Qinghan, who were looking forward to his return. His grandfather and mother were probably praying for him every day, praying that he could return safely. Every day they were worried about his safety. As for his uncle and aunt, while they were thinking about him, they were also doing their best to prepare for their atonement project. Their grand plan was to save all the orphans in the world, and give them peace and happiness. What was the purpose of living? Jun Moxie suddenly thought of this eternal question. Before his arrival, perhaps everyone had different goals. But now, Jun Moxie could basically confirm that in this world, there were many people who lived just for him, and that was it. If he was gone, his enemies would definitely laugh heartily, but many of his relatives would definitely collapse because of it. This was a responsibility that he had to bear. And this was also the motivation for Jun Moxie to live. At this moment, his mother's heart was divided into 2 halves. One had followed his father in the past, and the other had stayed in this world for him, and was still beating tenaciously. Yigahan lived for Murong Xiao, and in the end, he also died for Murong Xiao and his aunt, Han Yenyao, who swore never to look back in this life. Mei Shuiyan and Qian Sun, who were willing to die for him. I must let these people who care about me smile and be happy. As for those enemies, let them fall into eternal nightmares. Who asked you to choose to be enemies with me, the evil monarch? Jun Moxie let out a long breath, and his eyes turned from confusion to clarity. He murmured, "From now on, I will no longer live for myself, nor will I live for the world. I will only live for all of you who care for me. After thinking about it, June Moxie, who had regained his clarity of mind, sorted out his thoughts and felt a lot more relaxed. The war for seizing the heavens concerns the future of the Xian continent. Although it is important, the situation of the invasion of the foreign races is also very serious, and the consequences are even more serious, but the choice I made now is a little extreme or a little too much. But I am not wrong. I am definitely not wrong. Cultivate one's moral character and family, then rule the country and bring peace to the world. If the family is not stable, what does the rise and fall of the world have to do with me? I have never been a great hero, I am just a lowly person with limited vision. That's all. There's a saying that goes, the government forces the people to rebel, and they have no choice but to rebel. Perhaps many people are willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the world, regardless of the consequences, regardless of the cost, but I, June Moxie, am definitely not one of them. I can die in the war for seizing the heavens, but I cannot be killed by you using the war for seizing the heavens as a reason. I am not wrong, June Moxie said in a deep voice. As he spoke, he suddenly felt exceptionally clear and carefree in his heart. Just as he finished speaking, he felt something strange beside him. Turning his head, he saw that Mei Shuyan had already stopped cultivating and was standing in front of him, looking at him worriedly. I'm fine, I'm really fine. I just thought through some things, so I'm very good, really very good. June Moxie revealed a gentle but firm smile. His words were a little repetitive, but his tone became more and more firm. Mei Shuyan blinked her eyes and suddenly stretched out a claw, writing on the sand in front of her, "Give me pills." Pills? June Moxie's body shook, and he carefully looked at Mei Shuyan again. To his surprise, he discovered that the current Mei Shuyan had already climbed back to the peak of level 8 Xian beast. She wanted pills now, obviously because she wanted to rush to the level where she could transform into a human form after this breakthrough. They had only not seen each other for a few days, and he really did not expect that Mei Shuyan could actually make such a huge breakthrough. One had to know that although Mei Shuyan had rushed up with all her might previously, there were very few shortcuts in the path of Xian cultivation. The further one went, the slower one's breakthrough would be. It was the same even if one were to recultivate. In June Moxie's estimation, he would need at least a month's time before he could return to the level 8 Xian beast realm. But now, Mei Shuyan had actually brought this time limit forward. It was brought forward by a whole month. Looking at the determination in Mei Shuyan's eyes and the unconcealable pain, June Moxie's heart shook, and he suddenly understood. Snake King's injury was a great blow to him, but it was also a huge stimulus to Mei Shuyan. After Snake King's injury, Mei Shuyan, who had suffered a huge blow, must have been practicing day and night, without sleep or rest. If it were anyone else, it would not be feasible to use pills to forcefully advance. Whether it was the invasion of the heart's demons, the insufficient realm of the body, or the huge explosion of the pills, it would be enough to crush the person to death. But Mei Shuyan was different, because Mei Shuyan was cultivating the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Secondly, Mei Shuyan was currently in the Hongjun Pagoda. Thirdly, shapeshifting into a Xian beast only required the mental state of a peak level 9 Xian beast. But now, although Mei Shuyan's cultivation was still a distance away, her real cultivation was a solid level 4 venerable. Because she had risked her life to consume the Saint King pill, she had broken through the limits of a venerable, and had reached the realm of a saint. Fourthly, the meridians in Mei Shuyan's body had been broken through by a huge force. So all the obstacles were no longer a problem. Mei Shuyan had already recovered to the peak of level 8 Xian beast cultivation. It was not easy for her to endure until now. If not for the fact that the art of unlocking heaven's fortune broke through to the second level, Mei Shuyan would have done this before now. June Moxie nodded and took out a few jade bottles from his bosom. First, He took out a bone-tempering pill and gave it to Mei Shuyan. Then, he took out the heavenly yuan pill, soul-gathering pill, vitality linkage pill, limitless pill, and heaven extremes pill. Mei Shuyan did not hesitate. She used the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to dissolve the bone-tempering pill. Then, she took out the heavenly yuan pill and swallowed it. After a long time, "Emos, yeah, help me get a set of clothes. You go out for a while." Jun Moxie was waiting when he heard a familiar voice in his ear. He was overjoyed and turned around to look. He saw that Mei Shuyan was still in her original form. But she had already opened her mouth to speak. She was staring at him and giving him instructions. It must be known that Mei Shuyan's clothes had been destroyed after she had reverted to her original form. So, she did not need to wait until she had finished taking the vitality linkage pill, vitality gathering pill, and heavenly yuan pill. Then, she could easily transform. As for the mysterious extreme pill and the heaven extremes pill, Mei Shuyan obviously wanted to transform into her human form. That way, she could achieve the greatest effect. But she would have to face the awkward situation of being naked once she transformed into her human form. So, the first thing Mei Shuyan wanted to do was to drive this ruffian out. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Why do you want to go out first? It's not like I haven't seen it before. We are an old couple. You don't have to treat me like an outsider. Jun Moxie rubbed his chin and smiled evilly. His eyes twinkled. Jun Dashao, who had regained his calmness, started to spout nonsense again. I'll just wait for a few more days. I'm not in a hurry anyway. Plus, I don't have enough power to transform. More haste makes waste. It's better for me to stabilize myself. There's no need to rush. Mei Shuyan had a lot of ways to deal with Jun Moxie. Her words made Jun Dashao anxious. My dear lady, I've been waiting so long for you to transform again. Why are you telling me that you're not in a hurry at this crucial moment? You're not in a hurry, but I am. Okay. I'll give you the clothes. I'll go out now. Is that okay? Jun Moxie had no choice but to compromise. He secretly gritted his teeth. Little guy, when you transform into your human form, I'll definitely let you know how powerful I am. Jun Dashao took out a set of clothes and placed it on the ground. Then, he left the Hongjun pagoda. When he came in again, Jun Moxie looked out and suddenly felt dizzy. In front of him, a familiar figure in white stood quietly in the thick spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Under the illumination of the mysterious tree, a pair of beautiful eyes were looking at Jun Moxie with longing, deep affection, and glistening tears. It was as if a fairy from the 9 heavens had suddenly appeared. Fairy Ling Bo was alive, and Chang Yi from the Moon Palace had descended. It's been a long time, Mei Shuyan. Perhaps I'm a failure in the aspect of being a human. Tonight, I've been thinking about the plot while drinking wine. So, one of my brothers drank with me, but I raised my glass and clinked it with another. Another brother said that I can't drink liquor, and asked me to bring beer. But I stood up and brought a bottle of vinegar. In short, old readers who are familiar with me can see that when I'm blindly piling up flowery words, I've encountered a bottleneck. As for me, I am doing my best to overcome this bottleneck. The plot has been planned long ago. But the most helpless thing is that when I wanted to write about a tiger, I ended up drawing a cat. This is a problem of feeling. The busyness of the Spring Festival has undeniably affected me greatly. Extremely. So, during this period of time, whether I'm at my relative's house or at my own house, whether I'm sitting or lying down, I've been thinking about the plot. I want to write as fast as I can, without any pause, and in one go. Return. These 2 days I've had some sort of feeling. That's why I have the courage to write this paragraph. It's also my sincerest apology to my brothers and sisters. Being distracted will only make me a joke. After the busyness of the Spring Festival, I'll start to break out continuously. I'll give all my time to you. To Xie Jun. I'll say this very sincerely, I hope you'll support me. Thank you. During this period of time, the Spring Festival has left me with no battle strength and no fighting spirit. I hope you can give me confidence. Give me motivation. Tomorrow is the last busy day of the Spring Festival. After tomorrow's dinner, the Spring Festival will be history for me. I'll start working hard. Work hard. Please support me with your monthly votes. Chapter 834. June Moxie wanted to smile, but he found that the muscles on his face were stiff. He wanted to go forward, but he found that he couldn't move his feet. The huge surprise made him completely unable to control himself. The joy and happiness of regaining what he had lost filled his heart in an instant, although he knew that this day would come, although he clearly knew that he would see the beauty that he hadn't seen for a long time when he came in again, although he felt that he was completely prepared to welcome the return of Mei Xuan, but June Moxie still couldn't bear it when it came to the last minute. It turned out that such a huge feeling of happiness also came with a huge pressure. Shui Yan. June Moxie felt that his own voice was inexplicably trembling. In fact, it was extremely difficult for him to even utter those two words. His throat was dry, and there was a kind of feeling of happiness at the tip of his nose in the thick spiritual energy. That white figure trembled violently. Her eyelashes lightly blinked, and 2 drops of tears suddenly fell lightly. The spiritual energy mist surged, scattered, and gathered again. Mei Xuan moved slightly, took 2 steps, and looked at June Moxie. Her delicate body suddenly trembled more and more violently, and there was a sad smile on her face. Suddenly, she squatted on the ground and covered her face with both hands. Tears gushed out from the gaps between her fair and smooth fingers. June Moxie let out a low and hoarse roar from his throat. The next moment, he had already tightly hugged the beauty in front of him, and at this moment, Mei Xuan also threw away all her previous reservations and silently shed tears of joy as she hugged him tightly. During this period of time, the two of them still met every day. But after Mei Xuan recultivated this time, the moment they met again in human form, both of them had the same feeling that it was a lifetime ago, as if it had been too long since the last time they met. The two of them hugged each other tightly, feeling each other's most real existence, but neither of them said a word. After a long time, Mei Xuan gently broke free from June Moxie's embrace. Her face was full of shyness, and she lightly brushed her hair and softly said, "Have I changed?" "You've changed. You've become even more beautiful. You used to be as beautiful as a fairy. But now you're like a fairy that has transformed into a human. You're even more beautiful than you were in the past." June Moxie looked greedily at the beautiful face in front of him as he exclaimed in admiration, "You're still so glib." During this period of time, Mei Xuan's eyes became moist again. She wanted to say something, but she forcefully held it back and said in a slightly hoarse voice, "It's all thanks to you." Although she didn't say the words that she didn't want to say, both of them knew that during this period of time, Mei Xuan was at the lowest point of her life, and it was also the time when she felt the most inferior. During this period of time, if June Moxie showed the slightest bit of abnormality, there was no need to hate or abandon him. As long as he showed some care and concern, it would be enough to make the extremely sensitive Mei Xuan fall into eternal damnation. But fortunately, Mei Xuan wasn't disappointed. From the beginning to the end, June Moxie treated her with the same attitude as before. He didn't purposely show any affection, and he didn't show too much care and concern. His emotions didn't even fluctuate a bit. Everything was the same as before. But only this simple and warm feeling was sincere from the bottom of her heart. A promise that expressed too much sincerity would instead reveal the uncertainty in one's heart. Mei Xuan understood this logic, and so did June Moxie. Everything was expressed in silence. Words were useless, actions had proven everything. Mei Xuan concentrated on her cultivation, trying to recover as soon as possible. But wasn't Jun Dashao also fighting with his own state of mind? Neither increasing nor decreasing, and maintaining the original intention was the most difficult to achieve. Although Mei Shuyan had successfully recultivated, Jun Moxie's state of mind had also improved during this period of time. The benefits of this place could not be said to be small. Silly girl. How could Jun Moxie not understand what Mei Shuyan meant? He sniffled and smiled. You and I are one. Don't you know that if I break down first and lose my original intention, you will naturally break down too? But if you break down first, what will happen to me? He stretched out his hands and pulled Mei Shuyan into his arms again. He sighed happily. We are one. Mei Shuyan had no intention of struggling. She gently tilted her head and snuggled against her lover's broad and thick chest. Her face was peaceful and blissful. She didn't say anything. At this moment, there was no need to say anything, because no matter what she said, it was unnecessary. There was no need for it. The original intention was still the same, and the true feelings were everlasting. The purple spiritual energy in the Hongjun Pagoda started to spread, and the light from the tree shone on the two of them. The two of them stayed in this position, hugging each other, and didn't move for a long time. After a long time, Jun Moxie broke the silence with a chuckle. Dashao breathed in the fragrance of Mei Shuyan's body and said contentedly, My wife, let's find a time to consummate our marriage. You don't know, I've been holding it in for so long that I'm about to explode. If you don't believe me, you can touch me. A pervert was a pervert after all. The moment he opened his mouth, he revealed his true colors, but this pervert could really break the ice the moment he opened his mouth. Mei Shuyan snorted and pushed him away. She was both annoyed and amused at the same time. She was still feeling extremely touched, and this guy said something so inappropriate. He even said, touch me. Was that something that could be touched so casually? He was really shameless. It was infuriating. Then go find your sister Guan. What do you want from me? Mei Shuyan's face was red. She struggled out of his arms and smiled mischievously. Suddenly, she flew into the air and floated far away. Just by floating, she had already revealed her high level of Qin Gong, which was not inferior to the past at all. Mei Shuyan had only just transformed into her human form, but she already possessed an outstanding Qin Gong that was not inferior to the past. If her strength was really restored to its previous state, how fast would her Qin Gong reach? I'm very tired without you all this time. Jun Moxie sighed. He didn't have any intention of chasing after her. He just stood there and looked at Mei Shuyan's fairy-like figure. He sighed and said, Now that you're back, it's so good to have you here. Mei Shuyan stopped and sighed. I know. Mei Shuyan's eyes were fixed on Qian Sun, who was lying quietly on the heaven and earth spiritual vein. Her eyes revealed a gloomy expression as she said, When I saw Qian Sun lying here that day, I knew. So I didn't ask. I didn't want to ask, and I couldn't bear to ask. She looked at Jun Moxie affectionately and said confidently, But I believe everything will be fine. Qian Sun will wake up. I'm the best example of that. Jun Moxie nodded heavily. Yes, she will definitely wake up. Mei Shuyan basically knew everything that Jun Moxie had done during this period of time, so there was no need for Jun Dashao to explain. The two of them just stood there quietly for a while, feeling extremely complicated. Now that they had reunited and successfully transformed, the two of them were so happy that it felt like their hearts were about to explode. It seemed like no matter how they celebrated, they wouldn't be able to express the excitement and happiness in their hearts. However, the Snake King's injury and the situation during this period of time had caused the joy of their reunion to be tinged with a tinge of worry. All kinds of feelings gathered in their hearts. The two of them felt like there were thousands of words in their hearts, but they couldn't say them. Shuyan, what is your cultivation level now? Let's hear it. Jun Moxie broke the silence. Previously I was at the peak of level 8. After consuming the 3 types of elixirs, My cultivation and physique accumulated to a certain level, allowing me to make a breakthrough and successfully reach the peak of the 9th level of the form transformation realm, which is to say, I directly jumped to the supreme realm. After that, I took the extreme mystery pill and the extreme heaven pill, which allowed me to take another step forward. Now, although I haven't fully recovered to my previous state, my strength is still slightly lacking compared to before I came out of Tian Fa. I should be around the middle level of the venerable realm. Mei Shuiyan slightly furrowed her beautiful brows and said, with my current cultivation level, coupled with my newly obtained mystical art of unlocking heaven's fortune, I should have no problem protecting myself if I were to deal with ordinary experts with a level 4 venerable as my limit. But to help you deal with experts at the level of a holy king or holy emperor, I still don't have the strength to help you. Mei Shuiyan felt a little dissatisfied. Although her current progress was already very fast, and even something she didn't dare to dream about, June Moxie was now going to fight against the main force of the 3 Holy Lands at any time. Her current battle strength was far from enough. But June Moxie's mouth was already wide open in shock. Looking at the beauty in front of him, his jaw almost dropped to the ground. He remembered very clearly that when he broke through the 2nd level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, he was only at the level of Yuxian. Breaking through the 3rd level, he was only at the level of Tianxian. Compared to the current Mei Shuiyan, there was actually a difference of more than 10 levels. How could this be? Compared to anyone else, no matter how big the gap was, it shouldn't be this big, right? After I broke through the 2nd level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, I should have reached the peak of the Earth Xian realm, close to the level of Tianxian. Mei Shuiyan saw his confusion and charmingly rolled her eyes at him. She smiled sweetly and said, "You should know that after I broke through, I took 5 elixirs in a row. This is equivalent to increasing the purity of my cultivation by almost 200 years. You have forgotten about this? But that's still faster than me. It's still a little too much." Jun Dashao still felt that it was a little unfair. He felt that he was actually lowering his head in front of this beauty. This feeling of defeat made him very depressed. In his heart, he really wanted to grab this beauty in front of him and slap her plump little butt to get back at him. Don't be so unsatisfied. Those magical abilities of yours. I don't have them. Mei Shuiyan glared at him. Chapter 835. Yesterday's second night watch. Cough cough, I'm ashamed, there will be at least 2 more night watch tonight. Furthermore, June Moxie was a pioneer, and had already created his own path. Mei Shuiyan had followed his experience and practiced step by step, so that she wouldn't take unnecessary detours. This naturally saved her a lot of time and effort. In addition, a Xian beast's cultivation speed was much faster than that of a human's. This series of encounters had led to Mei Shuiyan having such an abnormal rate of progress. But there was also a flaw. When June Moxie had broken through, every breakthrough had been accompanied by a lot of benefits from the Hongjun Pagoda. Regardless of whether it was skills or treasures, they were all good things that could only be encountered and not sought. But Mei Shuiyan obviously didn't have the same kind of encounters. Because even though she was cultivating in the Hongjun Pagoda, but she wasn't the true owner of the Hongjun Pagoda. Therefore, even though Mei Shuiyan practiced the same cultivation technique, she couldn't achieve the same results as June Moxie. For example, June Moxie opened the 1st level and obtained the yin-yang escape, and the 2nd level was the flame of primal chaos and the furnace of good fortune, and these, Mei Shuiyan didn't obtain. June Moxie frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said thoughtfully, "I'll teach you a few more mnemonics. After you've memorized them, try to practice them. Let's see if you can practice them. If you can, then that's great. If you can't, then there's no need to force yourself." Mei Shuiyan saw that he was speaking in a serious tone and couldn't help but nod her head seriously. The heavens are divided into Qian Kuan, and the earth is divided into yin and yang. Yin and Yang are the reincarnation of all living things. At the beginning of the human body there was nothing but Yin and Yang. Creation is born, creation is lost. Therefore, it can be hidden in Yin and Yang. All living things can be hidden, and the human body can also be hidden. This was the mnemonics for the yin-yang escape. June Moxie recited it word by word. The yin-yang escape could be said to be the world's most invincible martial art. As long as he had the yin-yang escape, even if he was only a silver Xian expert, a saint emperor would not be able to harm him. The following battles inevitably became more and more dangerous, and the strength of the enemies she had to face also became higher and higher. Although Mei Shuiyan's current strength was not bad, it was still far from enough to face the experts of the Holy Emperor. She could not even protect herself. Perhaps only by learning the yin-yang escape could Mei Shuiyan be able to protect her life under any circumstances. To June Moxie, the lives of his loved ones were more important than anything else. June Moxie had previously asked Jun Wui to practice this martial art, but Jun Wui was completely unable to cross the threshold. It seemed like this martial art also differed from person to person. In other words, only those who practiced the art of unlocking heaven's fortune could practice this mysterious escape technique. At this moment, facing Mei Shuiyan, June Moxie was actually only thinking of giving it a try. If he succeeded, Mei Shuiyan would have a powerful life-saving talisman forever. Mei Shuiyan was deep in thought as she earnestly memorized the mnemonics. With her innate intelligence, she quickly memorized the mnemonics word for word. This is the main gist of my secret technique, the yin-yang escape. After practicing it, you can hide yourself in the void at any time. Regardless of whether it is metal, wood, water, fire or earth, you can hide yourself perfectly. Moreover, no smell will leak out. It can be said to be the world's most mysterious martial art. June Moxie said deeply, "You must seize the time to practice it. This is my greatest treasure for hiding myself and escaping." Although he said it casually, Mei Shuiyan was shocked. To be able to hide in the void at any time, she finally understood what Jun Moxie's mystical agility was. It had shocked the entire world. It turned out that there was such a mysterious martial art in this world. Moreover, Jun Moxie had imparted this unique skill to her without any reservations. This made her feel even more sweet in her heart, and she felt extremely happy. It was not only because of this martial art, but also because of June Moxie's sincerity. This kind of mysterious martial art was always kept a secret. Even a married couple was no exception. But June Moxie did it. This meant that June Moxie was using his actions to tell Mei Shuiyan, "No matter what happens, I will never doubt you." However, when it came to action, it was 10,000 times more important than saying it out loud. "Moxie, you will be fine, and I will be fine too." Mei Shuiyan's eyes were red. "Silly girl. Even if I don't teach it to you now, I will teach it to our son and daughter in the future. What kind of secret is this? Don't think too much, it's tiring." June Moxie laughed. "If you really feel guilty, why don't you pick a striptease for me? As long as you dance for me, I will be very happy, and you will feel guilty too. My idea is not bad, right?" "Get lost." Mei Shuiyan kicked him angrily. "Why does this guy always say such things when I am touched?" The two of them reunited after a long time. Naturally, June Moxie wanted to be intimate with Mei Shuiyan. Although Mei Shuiyan did not seem to be willing, she did not really have much resistance in her heart. However, both of them suppressed their impulses and chose to continue waiting. All of this was because the Snake King was still in the Hongjun Pagoda. Although the Snake King was completely unconscious, how could June Moxie and Mei Shuiyan not be touched when the Qian Sun Serpent Queen was injured because of June Moxie? The Snake King had never revealed anything before. However, the two of them were well aware of the feelings that the Snake King had buried deep in her heart. If both of them were to be so intimate, both of them would feel ashamed. Regardless of whether Green Hunter could see it or not, whether she could sense it or not, this was an extremely cruel thing to her. Mei Shiyan continued to stay in the Hongjun Pagoda to comprehend the yin-yang escape. Jun Moxie once again guided the primordial violet qi through Qian Sun's meridians, trying his best to stabilize her vitality. Then, he left in a flash. Previously, he had already spent a lot of time waiting for Mei Shiyan to break through. If the three Holy Lands were really fast, they might have already arrived at Chrysanthemum City by now. Jun Moxie still needed to make a good plan on how to fight this battle. Although he was full of confidence when he spoke to Dongfang Wenqing, victory was always reserved for those who were prepared. It was never wrong to be careful. Therefore, Jun Dashao used the yin-yang escape and silently hid in the void, sneaking into the Chrysanthemum City, because the moment he came out of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie could clearly feel that in just a day's time, this Chrysanthemum City had already changed. Truly, with the passage of time, things remained the same, but the people had changed. From the outside, Chrysanthemum City was still the original Chrysanthemum City, and the scenery was still the same. But with a little probing with divine sense, one could instantly sense that there were countless tyrannical divine senses in the city. These tyrannical divine senses converged into a huge net above Chrysanthemum City, constantly monitoring every move of everyone in Chrysanthemum City. No one was an exception. No one could be an exception. Feeling the tyrannical divine senses that filled the entire world, Jun Dashao also secretly clicked his tongue. It seemed that this time, the three Holy Lands had really put in a lot of effort. They actually sent out such a shocking number of top experts at one go. Jun Mo Xie carefully avoided the probing of the other party's spiritual sense. Then, he revealed himself and walked quietly on the street towards the direction of the Qin Manor. The closer they got, the more they felt the surging and surging divine perception envelop them, and it grew stronger and denser. Presently, it wouldn't be going too far to say that the entire Qin estate was set up like an iron wall. Jun Moxie laughed in his heart. Looks like the three Holy Lands had still set their target on the Qin family. They were certain that if he made any moves, they would definitely start with the Qin family and incite conflict between the two sides. The Qin family's Qin Qing Tian, just based on the strength and status of the people they had sent out, could no longer be considered a big character. Before this, he was only a small family's patriarch that the three Holy Lands did not even spare a glance for. But now, he was the face of the three Holy Lands. Jun Moxie had secretly spread the news that the three Holy Lands had sent out all their experts to protect Qin Qing Tian from assassination. Although most people were skeptical and did not know if it was true or not, under such circumstances, if Qin Qing Tian was really killed, the three Holy Lands' reputation would definitely hit rock bottom. Therefore, they had no choice but to protect the Qin family closely. They had no choice but to do so. But Jun Moxie did not intend to do so. Or, it could be said that spreading the news earlier was just a test, to see how the three Holy Lands would react. What Jun Dashao truly wanted was to completely destroy the three Holy Lands. It was not something that could end with just the three Holy Lands' reputation being tarnished. To Jun Dashao, even if the three Holy Lands were still the role model of the world after he killed them all, it did not matter. I only want your lives. If all of you die, then I'll be truly happy. Thus, whether or not the Qin family's patriarch had to die, or when he had to die, was actually secondary. Clearly feeling the heavy atmosphere of the Qin family, Jun Moxie smiled languidly. He had already thought of a plan. Jun Mo Xie didn't hesitate any longer, and slowly turned around. Then, he followed the crowd and slowly walked back. Just from the surface, the current Jun Dashao was no different from a normal passerby. His steps were heavy, his eyes cloudy, as though he did not know any martial arts at all. Strands of divine sense swept past his body and turned in another direction. Jun Moxie's expression did not change as he lowered his head and walked hurriedly. Suddenly, June Moxie's entire body shook, because he felt an aura that shocked him to the core. That was an extremely cold feeling that seemed to rise from his heart and spread throughout his entire body. In this late spring season, June Moxie actually felt an inexplicable chill that made his entire body feel like it was about to freeze. It was like the creepy feeling of walking through a mass grave alone on a dark night without any stars or moon. Even when he was at the coldest peak of the snowy mountain, June Moxie did not have such a feeling. But now, he felt it, and he felt it very vividly. June Moxie clearly remembered that he had just walked through this street, and there hadn't been any abnormalities. In fact, there hadn't been a single trace of it. But he had walked through it and then walked back. And it had only been a short moment. But it had given him two completely different feelings. This was something that he could only detect with his super strong divine sense. That was the most profound aura. Chapter 836. It was just a short moment, and this strange feeling suddenly disappeared without a trace. June Moxie lowered his head without batting an eyelid, but he quickly replayed the whole process in his mind. The passers-by, under his super memory, were replayed one by one in his mind, and compared to the passers-by on the road, he filtered them one by one. It didn't take long, and the furthest person who walked was only 100 zhang away. And although there were many people just now, the total number was less than 1,000. With this kind of population density, it could be considered as huge. But under the detection of June Moxie's amazing divine sense, these people appeared clearly. After a round of detection, June Moxie locked on to 7 people. Only these 7 people. These 7 people had just entered the range of 100 zhang that his divine sense could detect. After a round of elimination, June Moxie finally turned around lightly, and slowly walked back again. In front of him, a young man in black was walking forward at a moderate speed. His right leg seemed to be slightly lame, and his face was expressionless. His eyes were cloudy, and his eyelids were swollen. His gaze was drooping, looking at his feet, and his footsteps were weak, as if he was too weak to stand up to the wind, but June Moxie instinctively felt that there was something wrong with this person. Because June Moxie faintly felt a trace of evil. This kind of evil feeling was very strange, but there was also a trace of inexplicably familiar feeling. And there was a kind of strange feeling that made even June Moxie a little afraid. If this person was an expert, then this person had definitely reached a profound realm where his divine sense was completely restrained, and had returned to its original state. This kind of realm, even from the Holy Emperor, June Moxie had not felt it before. June Moxie's divine sense told him that the direction this person was heading towards was the weakest point of the divine sense net formed by the experts of the 3 Holy Lands. As his footsteps deviated from the direction, this feeling also became more and more obvious. The divine sense of the experts of the 3 Holy Lands had enveloped everyone in this city, but they had not swept past this person. This was because every time his divine sense probed, this person would avoid it in advance. It was very obvious that this person had also released his own divine sense to probe the surroundings. Furthermore, he had determined the direction and position of his movement based on his own conclusion. The most bizarre thing was that the 3 Holy Lands clearly had several holy emperors standing guard here, but none of them had discovered him. Even the current June Moxie wasn't capable of such an ability. If not for that flash of inspiration, even June Moxie would not have been able to detect this person's spiritual sense. This person's movements might seem lazy and unremarkable, but June Moxie's keen senses told him that every single pore on this person's body was in the most relaxed state. His current walking posture was the most effortless and relaxed method. Regardless of whether it was their movements or movements, they seemed simple and ordinary, but in June Moxie's eyes, they actually faintly conformed to some kind of profound principle. Looking at the back of this black-robed person, the corners of June Moxie's mouth suddenly drew back, revealing a trace of a mysterious smile. It can't be him, right? Just when Jun Dashao had a flash of inspiration and vaguely understood the identity of this mysterious person, the black-robed person suddenly stopped and slowly turned around to face Jun Moxie. His eyes seemed to reveal a strange smile as he said slowly, "Kid, you've been following this young master all the way here. Could it be that you want to treat me to a drink?" Jun Moxie was slightly taken aback. His heart moved and he said, "Why not? Meeting you is fate. What's the point of treating you to a drink? I'll treat you to a drink, but I didn't bring any silver. Help me pay first, and I'll pay you later." "You want to take advantage of your brother, Jun? You're wrong. But if I treat you to a drink, it's still possible." Fate indeed, what a coincidence. The black-robed person shrugged and said, "I also didn't bring any silver." Then, he looked at Jun Moxie in a strange manner. "I don't know if I can drink wine without money?" Jun Moxie mimicked him and shrugged. "Why don't we give it a try? Perhaps we can drink it." "Interesting, interesting." The black-robed person chuckled and looked at Jun Moxie calmly. "Give it a try, let's give it a try. Since no one brought any silver, and you asked me to treat you to a drink, then I'll be the host for this meal. Please." Jun Moxie said generously, gesturing with his hand. "So even if you don't have silver, you can still be the host. The ways of the world have really changed." The black-robed person shook his head and said somewhat ruefully. The two of them walked together, leisurely walking forward. Tongguan Hall was right in front. Jun Dashao, on the other hand, was revisiting this place. Although the two of them were basically walking shoulder to shoulder, walking side by side, looking calm and harmonious on the surface, every movement of the two of them was a strange kind of retreat. When Jun Moxie took a step forward, the black-robed person just happened to lift his own foot after Jun Moxie lifted his foot, walking in the same direction. This black-robed person's position was to the right of Jun Moxie, but with every step, Jun Moxie's right shoulder would move back a little. His foot was moving forward, but his shoulder was moving back. This posture was undoubtedly very strange. It was as if there was some invisible thread pulling at him from behind, but he insisted on walking forward. But the black-robed person's movements were the exact opposite. Every step that Jun Moxie took was before the black-robed person lifted his foot. But this black-robed person's shoulder seemed to be moving forward. Luckily, he wasn't walking very fast, otherwise, it would be as if he was charging forward blindly. It was extremely awkward. Both of their postures were very special. What was certain was that if the two of them maintained this posture and ran at full speed, Jun Moxie would definitely twist himself into a fried dough twist. Of course, when Jun Dashao couldn't hold on any longer and fell to the ground, that black-robed person would also fall head first to the ground, kissing it passionately. But the two of them maintained this strange posture, their faces actually maintaining a cheerful expression, as if they were extremely satisfied. Every time their gazes slanted, the other party would basically move half a step forward or back before their gaze landed on their bodies. They were determined not to let the other party's gaze land on the spot that they had intended to land on. All the way to the front of Tongguan Hall, the two of them, who seemed relaxed and carefree, actually had beads of sweat on their foreheads. This was only a short distance of several dozen zhang, but the two of them had already exchanged blows no less than several hundred times. Almost every lift of a foot, every wave of a hand, every stride, and every landing of a foot was accompanied by a confrontation. One could imagine the massive consumption of mental energy. It was not inferior to an intense battle. Although Jun Moxie had maintained the advantage of taking the first step, he did not dare to shift his center of gravity, so he might not be able to gain the upper hand, let alone the advantage. This strange and inexplicable battle, to Jun Moxie, was a terrifying turn of events that he had never encountered in his previous life. Da Xiao had never imagined that there would actually be someone in this world who had cultivated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, whose reactions were as fast as his, and was not at a disadvantage at all. Even if he raised his eyebrows or moved his eyes, the black-robed person would immediately adopt the most appropriate countermeasure. And the position that he had immediately concealed himself was precisely the crucial point where June Moxie's attack would have the greatest effect. Young Master June couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart when he realized the identity of that person. This person's reputation is indeed not empty. That was because he was well aware of how much of an advantage he had. This black-robed person, who was evenly matched with him, was heavily injured, and his strength was almost depleted. And that injury was a fatal injury that could kill a normal person 100 times over. But under such circumstances, he was still able to restrain June Moxie without batting an eyelid. I am really too lucky today. Although the black-robed person's walking posture seemed to be passive, in reality, he was maintaining an absolute initiative. The only slight flaw in the entire process was that June Dashao had taken the initiative at the beginning, but because he had fallen behind, he was unable to turn the situation around. Although he was not at a disadvantage, he seemed to be in a passive state of defense. Although the two of them were still evenly matched, to the black-robed person who had always been arrogant and looked down on everyone, this was tantamount to a great humiliation. He was actually being ridden on by a young lad, who was forcefully taking the lead all the way. Every time he wanted to take a step ahead, he would always be harassed by the other party with a raise of his eyebrows. And if he were to forcefully take the lead, he would definitely have to pay a hefty price. Motherf *Ker, I haven't come out for a few hundred years. Is the Xian cultivation of this world actually this amazing? Can a young lad actually be so abnormal? Pfft, calling him a young lad is already an exaggeration. The person in front of me is basically a young lad who is still wet behind the ears. But this young lad, whether it was his soul, divine sense or reaction, had actually reached a superb state where his entire body was cast as one, and he could move as he pleased. The blood prison in the sky does not move an eye, the 9 nether seas of hatred do not turn back. This body becomes heaven and earth, this exquisite heart allows one to roam freely. This was a state that he had cultivated for a few hundred years in the past to reach. If there were a few more such abnormal people in this world, how would he be able to survive? This is too crazy, isn't it? The two of them walked for a short distance of a few hundred feet, although it was just a silent confrontation, and they did not use any Xian cultivation, but the danger was enough to make one's soul tremble. If it was a real fight, and the two of them had similar cultivation, no matter who it was, they would probably have died a few hundred times. There was an old saying, listening to the clap of thunder in a silent place. The battle in the dark all along the way perfectly illustrated the true meaning of this sentence. And it was even more shocking than that. Even the sudden clap of thunder in the quietest place would not be as shocking as this silent battle. Although the battle was fierce, there was still an end to the journey. The moment the two of them entered Tongguan Hall, the battle had already begun. Both of them had their own misgivings, and did not waste time, finding an empty table on the first floor and sitting down, facing each other. The black-clothed man's face was still expressionless, but it was clear that the back of his clothes was already soaked. Although the battle had only lasted for a short time, it had used up a lot of mental energy. Chapter 837. As June Moxie swayed his waist, he waved his hand to call the waiter over, and ordered a large table of dishes and wine. He didn't pay attention to the price of the dishes at all, and directly ordered a large table of dishes. The waiter happily brought up a pot of fragrant tea, and then ordered the kitchen to prepare quickly. The handsome young master in front of him looked like a rich man at first glance. This meal could be a big profit. But he didn't know that the young master in front of him was indeed a big old man with no money. He ordered a dish but didn't pay, and he also didn't pay when he ordered a large table of dishes. "What's your name?" The black-clothed man opposite him looked at June Moxie, and his eyes were still stiff, without the slightest fluctuation. June Moxie found that this guy could actually cultivate to the point that even the look in his eyes could change at any time, and it could be fixed at a strange level. "Do you have to ask for my name?" "A name is just a mark. Why bother?" June Moxie looked at him helplessly. "Isn't it good to have a drink? After drinking, you go your way and I go mine. Isn't that good?" "Nonsense. You used your divine sense to probe, followed behind me, and chased after me like an annoying fly. Don't tell me that you just want to have a drink with me? Do you think I'm stupid?" The black-clothed man scolded coldly. "Don't play games with me. What's your purpose? Just say it." "Fine, fine, fine. I'll tell the truth. Why do you have to be so ostentatious and fierce?" June Moxie smiled in a seemingly sincere and gentle manner, and made a gesture of confiding in him. The expression on his face became extremely serious. Although the black-clothed man was indifferent, he couldn't help but be interested. Lengling asked, "What's the reason?" June Moxie said from the bottom of his heart, "Actually, the real reason is this. When I first saw you, I found that you were like a firefly in the dark, emitting a dazzling light that even the polar night couldn't cover. Although the world is vast and the affairs of the world are like tides, an outstanding man like you, no matter where you go, will always stand out and stand out. It really makes me admire you very much. Your heroic appearance makes me feel a strong sense of dizziness. It makes me feel that if I can't treat you to a drink, it is simply a heinous sin. Even if I go through 3 lifetimes of deep regret, it can't make up for the intense and painful regret in my heart. So although I don't have money, I still resolutely want to treat you to a drink." "Stop!" The indifferent expression on the black-clothed man's face finally changed, and the aloof expression in his eyes finally changed. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling for a long time, as if he was about to faint. Then, he shook his head twice and suddenly slammed the table. "Bastard! What the f*** are you talking about? Are you even talking like a human? Haven't I made myself clear enough? What I mean is, you and I are fated. In the previous life, I was a man and you were a woman," June Moxie said with a serious face, and his eyes were full of sincerity and certainty. "You are my wife. F***you. Why don't you go and die?" The black-clothed man's thousands of years of self-restraint disappeared in an instant, and his face became the color of the bottom of a pot. The 2 hands that were placed on the table were covered with a layer of goosebumps at a speed visible to the naked eye. His body that was as steady as a mountain also trembled slightly, as if he couldn't bear the cold of the cold night. "I know you have your doubts, but it's true," June Moxie said painfully. "If you still don't believe me, maybe you can go underground and ask. Although our relatives in the previous life are no longer here, their souls are still here. If you can go and ask, I believe they will definitely give you a definite answer. Then you should believe me, right? My fated person." "Go and ask? You want me to kill myself first and then go and ask? Fated person? Bullsh** T fated person." The black-clothed man who was about to collapse pressed his hands on the table, and made a posture as if he was about to stand up. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with fire. Even his breathing became heavy, and he said word by word, "Kid, do you think this young master is very fun? Do you know how to write the word death?" As he spoke, the blue veins on his forehead suddenly popped up, and there was a hint of frenzied rage in his eyes. For more than 1,000 years, it seemed that no one had ever been able to anger him to such an extent. No matter when, he had always maintained the elegant demeanor of a young master. Even when he was being chased by the whole world, his expression didn't change, and he was aloof and free. Even when he had a narrow escape from death, he was still carefree and did whatever he wanted. But today, he had met this kid, and his state of mind had been broken by just a few words. How could his state of mind be so unstable? But what he said was too disgusting. It seemed like no one could stand it, right? Look at you. I said that I don't have a purpose, and you forced me to say it. But when I really said it, you didn't believe me. June Moxie spread his hands innocently. Why are you so difficult to please? As he spoke, he squinted his eyes. Moreover, even if I really have a purpose, do you think that I will tell you just because you asked? You seem to be a little too naive. Although naive people are very cute, it is a very difficult thing to survive in this unpredictable martial world. Although your strength is not bad, it is still not enough to deal with the unpredictable martial world. You have to listen to me, June Moxie advised sincerely. The black-clothed person suddenly exhaled a long breath of air. This breath of air lasted for a full 5 minutes, and it caused June Moxie's words to come to a screeching halt. His hair and sleeves fluttered in the wind, and it was clear that he had been holding his breath to the point where an ordinary person's lung capacity couldn't handle it. Then, he slammed the table and shouted, "Waiter! Why aren't the dishes served yet? Do you want to go to the fields to plant now? Hurry up! Do you want to find trouble?" He turned his head, and didn't look at June Moxie. In fact, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself if he were to look at that repulsive pretty boy's face again. So, he would rather risk his injuries and expose his tracks to force his way out. Then, he would pull out that annoying and lively tongue of his. He felt helpless in his heart. I have lived for more than 1,000 years, but I have never seen such an outrageous person. This is really too king infuriating. In my previous life, you were a woman and I was a man. You were my wife. This young master is really ked. Just based on the fact that this young master has lived for more than 1,000 years, it should be enough for you to reincarnate 10 times, right? The man in black rolled his eyes weakly. He suddenly felt that coming out this time was a huge mistake. If he knew that he would meet such an outrageous person after coming out, he would rather stay in the seal for another 500 years. Ho ho ho. Old brother. June Moxie chuckled in a voice that would make one's hair stand on end. He chuckled and said, "May I know your name? This old brother?" The man in black's face was full of black lines. He sucked in a breath of cold air as if he had a toothache. He gritted his teeth and tilted his head. In a tone that sounded like he was about to cry, he said, "Do you king know how to speak human language? Even your ancestors' 8 generations, are not qualified to call this young master old brother. Do you understand?" I understand. I was just addressing you out of respect. Why are you unhappy, then? Brother, how old are you this year? June Moxie immediately changed the way he addressed him. He had a graceful demeanor. The man in black leaned his head on the table and pulled his hair with both hands. He used a weak voice to moan painfully, "Can you king shut your mouth? Will you die if you don't speak?" Of course I cannot speak, but I don't think it is a matter of life and death. Could it be that you don't like the name old brother? Then little brother? Little brother? Old brother? Which one do you prefer? Don't look at me so fiercely. My little heart is beating so fast. Actually, this Tongwan Hall's dishes are very delicious. I came here once last time and the taste was really delicious. Someone else treated me last time and it was really satisfying. This time, it's my turn to treat you, but I didn't bring any money. June Moxie was beaming with joy. He smacked his lips as he reminisced about the taste and suddenly asked, although I said I would treat you today, but you really didn't bring any money? Money, it means silver, copper, or something. Gold is fine too, really didn't bring any? The black-clothed man's head, which was resting on the table, lifted up slightly. He smashed his head on the table twice and let out an extremely miserable sigh. It's fine. You don't have to be in so much pain. June Moxie patted his chest and comforted him. Don't worry. Isn't it just a meal? Besides, forgetting to bring money isn't anything shameful. Everyone has experienced this before. I already said that I'm treating, they won't say that you're eating for free. Let me tell you, the last time I was there. The man in black raised his head with tears streaming down his face, looking at June Dashao in a daze. He actually felt a little like he was looking up at a tall mountain. He suddenly grabbed June Moxie's hands and shook them vigorously. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Big brother. I'll call you Big Brother, all right? In my entire life, for more than 1,300 years, I've never submitted to anyone. But today I really submit to you. Can you just shut your mouth? Can you just shut your mouth? My dear Big Brother, ah. As he spoke, the black-clothed man was already howling at the top of his lungs. As he howled, he smashed his forehead against the table with a bang-bang sound. This kind of painful appearance would make anyone who saw it feel a sense of sympathy. Why did this guy look like he was being raped by hundreds of mystical beasts? Moreover, those mystical beasts should be at the same level and weight as a bear, lion, tiger, or elephant. His voice was really a little too loud, and it was still mealtime. Instantly, everyone on the first floor of Tongguan Hall turned their heads to look over, their eyes burning. What was the meaning of this? Big brother, little brother? What was going on? Why was it so loud? June Moxie laughed dryly and bowed apologetically. He explained, My apologies, everyone. This brother of mine has epilepsy. He's usually a good, normal person. Sounds of "oh" could be heard as they were suddenly enlightened. You're the one who has epilepsy. Your King whole family has epilepsy. The man in black stood up and shouted in grief and indignation, his face filled with rage. His body trembled like a chrysanthemum in the wind. Chapter 838. I believe everyone has already guessed that this black-robed man was the 14th young master whose name shook the entire continent, the #1 madman in the world. However, the #1 madman in the world for more than 1,000 years was currently crying without tears. He was extremely depressed and sullen. After the Battle of Tianfa, this #1 madman in the world, who was also the true #1 expert in the world, had been bombarded by many saints and the Holy Emperor, losing more than 95% of his life. His injuries were so heavy that even he could not bear it. At the very least, it was impossible for him to regain his former glory in a short period of time. Therefore, although he was extremely unwilling, he could only hide and heal his wounds, hoping to make a comeback as soon as possible and rule the world. But in less than a month's time, a song spread crazily throughout the entire Xian continent. And it spread at an astonishing speed like a meteor. Within a few days, it had swept the entire Xian continent. Oh, I forgot to introduce him. The 9 serenities and 14 masters, this madman, lived up to his title of Young Master. He was actually a fanatical music fan. Even his own weapon was a strange instrument forged by himself after melting the 9 serenities' frost blade. It looked like a zither but not a zither, like a zither but not a zither, like a flute but not a flute. In short, it was neither. He gave this strange music a name, divine music. From this, it could be seen how much he loved music. He'd unintentionally heard half of that soul-stirring, the smiling, proud, pugilistic world song, and he'd been stunned by it to the point where he couldn't even eat or drink. But the most unbearable thing was that no matter where it was passed down, it was not the complete version, and no matter what, it was lacking in artistic conception compared to the original. This caused the 14th young master, who considered himself to be a master of music, to feel extremely depressed. After asking around, he finally confirmed that the original origin of this song was this chrysanthemum city. At the same time, there was also a beautiful legend. A graceful and elegant young master dressed in white robes stood at the top of the Tongguan Hall, leisurely playing the zither. He even defeated 2 venerable experts with a wave of his hand, leisurely and elegant as he left. Along the way, he sang in a carefree manner, as if he was an immortal from the heavens. In just one night, the mysterious young man in white had instantly become the idol of all the women in the world. He seemed to have become the idol of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. But at this time, the 9 serenities and 14 masters also understood that the 3 Holy Lands had also sent out countless top-notch experts to gather in Chrysanthemum City. Although the injuries of the 9 serenities and 14 masters had gotten better, they were still quite heavy. They couldn't fight at all, but after careful consideration, they still spared no effort and came all the way here. The 3 Holy Lands were going to deal with that mysterious white-robed youth. If they really succeeded, then the smiling, proud pugilistic world song would truly become a masterpiece. In other words, from now on, he might never be able to hear the original song ever again. To the music fanatic 9 serenities and 14 masters, this was something that he couldn't bear even if he were to be beheaded. So he came. Furthermore, the 9 serenities and 14 masters was confident that as long as he didn't reveal his tracks and didn't use his unique Xian technique, then even if all the ancestors of the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion lined up in front of him, they wouldn't be able to recognize him. So although he couldn't make a move, he wasn't worried about his own safety. Today was the first day he had entered Chrysanthemum City, and it hadn't even been an hour since he entered this holy land of music. As he walked towards the famous Tongguan Hall, he was also imagining in his heart how his idol, who was able to compose a song like the smiling, proud pugilistic world, would look like, but he didn't expect that he would meet such a person before he even met his idol. A person whose strength was so high that it surprised him, so young that it surprised him, and so talkative that it made him want to fall apart. He didn't know what was wrong with this fellow, but he actually stuck to him for no reason. He tried to shake him off, but he couldn't. Then, after a while, the 9 serenities and 14 masters finally confirmed that this fellow was not simple, and had the qualifications to eat at the same table as him. Secondly, he was a little curious about this fellow. Who was he? What was his motive? Most importantly, did he recognize his true identity? Why did he take a fancy to him? Could it be that he had some flaws on him? So the 9 nether 14th young master went with the flow and accepted this fellow's invitation. In any case, they were going to Tongguan Hall anyway, and it was on the way. With someone treating him, why not? The 14 masters didn't think that he would be countered by this young man in front of him. But the 9 serenities and 14 masters was really regretting it now. He felt that accepting this fellow's invitation was the biggest mistake he had made in the past 1,300 years. If time could turn back, even if this young master still had his Xian cultivation, he would rather be beaten up by him than eat at the same table with him. Eating at the same table was secondary. The most important thing was that he definitely wouldn't say a single word to him. This was really too torturous. He'd only asked for a name, and the things that followed almost caused him to collapse. If he'd asked for a few more things, the 9 nether 14th young master shuddered uncontrollably. Terrifying. The most terrifying thing was that he couldn't use any Xianqi. Right now, he was in Chrysanthemum City, a place where the experts of the 3 Holy Lands gathered. If it was in the past, he wouldn't be afraid even if he was exposed. But now that his strength had not recovered, he didn't dare to reveal himself. Don't look at how the people of the 3 Holy Lands hated their enemies to the core. But if they had to choose between annihilating their enemies or destroying themselves, they would definitely choose him. Most of the strongest experts here, who were above the martial saint level, were old acquaintances who would not rest until he was dead. He believed that as long as he revealed even the slightest bit of his aura, they would immediately swarm over like locusts devouring the 5 valleys and gnaw at him until not a single bone was left. With his current abilities, not to mention winning the battle. Even escaping would be a problem. But if he wanted to get rid of this mortal fly in front of him without using his xian qi, with his current strength, it was no different from daydreaming. So the 9 serenities and 14 masters was in for a tragedy. And it was a great tragedy. Since he was born, he had never encountered such a great tragedy in the 9 nether realm and the Xian continent. At this moment, the 9 serenities and 14 masters felt a strong sense of defeat, like a dragon trapped in a shoal, or a tiger out of a plain. Even when the table was filled with dishes, this number 1 madman in the world still hadn't walked out of his sullen mood. He looked at June Moxie with a gaze that looked like he wanted to eat him up. Please, 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 please don't be polite. June Moxie treated his guests politely. If one were to evaluate June Moxie from the perspective of a hospitable host, he would definitely receive 10 points. But his next sentence made the 9 serenities and 14 masters immediately have the urge to flip the table. Since I didn't bring any money, I'll just dine and dash hee hee hee. If I don't eat, it'll be a waste. If I eat, it'll be a waste. If I'm fast, I'll get it. If I'm slow, I won't get it. The 9 serenities and 14 masters held his chopsticks and drank a mouthful of wine. He almost choked and looked at June Moxie helplessly. This young master is very curious. Can you be any more shameless? Don't talk nonsense. How is this young master shameless? This young master is kind enough to treat you to a meal, but you're slandering me. You're too difficult to get along with. However, since you've asked, this young master is magnanimous. I can still give you a few pointers. There's no limit to shamelessness. Shamelessness is a broad road to heaven. It's a great knowledge that's easy to learn but difficult to master. It's worth spending a lifetime to explore, to study, and to seek knowledge. We must persevere in our efforts, persevere in our struggles, persevere in our research, and tirelessly learn. The realm of shamelessness, we must constantly strive to reach new heights. Of course, this young master was just speaking in passing. How could this young master be shameless? June Moxie spoke in a cadence as if he was composing a poem. Sigh. There's no need to continue. I've already seen the highest realm of this knowledge from you. I believe that your achievements in this field are unprecedented and unprecedented. 9 serenities and 14 masters sighed painfully. He grabbed the wine pot, raised his head, and gulped down a few mouthfuls. His face had an expression of "there's nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart." Apart from drinking, he didn't have the mood to pick up any of the dishes on the table. He had no appetite. Even if he forced himself to eat, it would be like chewing wax. He might as well not eat at all. June Moxie snickered in his heart. However, his divine sense was paying close attention to every movement of the person in front of him, and he was verifying it with his own understanding. He had already recognized that the person in front of him was the insufferably arrogant 9 serenities and 14 masters from that day. Moreover, he could also see that 9 serenities and 14 masters' injuries had obviously not healed. Otherwise, why would June Moxie dare to be so presumptuous in front of him? This was a real lunatic. If he still had some of his strength left, he could definitely turn June Moxie into a meat patty with just one slap. Although June Dashao would never belittle himself, he still acknowledged the astonishing strength of 9 serenities and 14 masters. However, he didn't have to worry about that now. Naturally, June Moxie wouldn't reveal his true identity. He kept rambling and talking eloquently, but he actually had an ulterior motive. Otherwise, with June Moxie's personality, how could he do something that would leave a great hidden danger just because he was greedy for a moment of pleasure? However, after this interaction, June Moxie realized that this 9 serenities and 14 masters didn't seem to be as cruel as the rumors said. 9 serenities and 14 masters didn't put on airs, nor did he have any demeanor to speak of. In fact, this was a realm that June Moxie had been pursuing. This was also the reason why he talked so much nonsense. Because he was referencing, he was comprehending, every movement and expression that 9 serenities and 14 masters carved represented his own achievements. And this achievement was also confirming Jun Moxi's realm step by step, guiding his comprehension. It was a process for people to struggle step by step from poverty to success. It was the same when one didn't have a high status. However, once one succeeded, no matter how calm one was, he would also get carried away for a while. This was human nature, there was nothing wrong with it. Therefore, those people began to pursue the so-called temperament, demeanor, and all the other external things that could reveal the so-called inner qualities and foundation. Whether it was being detached from worldly affairs, indifferent to worldly affairs, or being domineering, it was all a kind of disguise. The so-called aristocratic temperament was even more so. After deliberately pursuing it, even if one seemed to have it, one would lose one's true self. Only by going one step further in this realm and reaching the true peak would one begin to recognize what one wanted. And people in this realm often faced the world with their true temperament. They would cry if they wanted to cry and laugh if they wanted to. There was no disguise at all. This was returning to one's true self in life. It was similar to returning to one's true self in martial arts. However, this kind of true self returning to one's true self was the true transcendent realm. Only the 9 serenities and 14 masters was the true self, the best interpretation of nature. If this realm was completely integrated with the returning to one's true self in martial arts, then one would be a true expert. However, such an outstanding person was extremely rare. In the entire planet, there might not even be one person who could reach this realm in thousands of years. This was the true realm, a realm that even Jun Dashao himself had not reached. From what Jun Dashao knew, there were only 2 people who had this kind of temperament. One was the 9 Nether First Young Master. The first young master had already reached a higher level than nature, so it was needless to say that he had returned to one's true self. And the other person was the 9 serenities and 14 masters before him. Although the 9 serenities and 14 masters was far from the 9 Nether First Young Master, he had indeed reached this realm. Jun Moxi wanted to see how far he had reached with this realm. Could it truly be integrated with one's own Xian skills? And how far was he from such a realm? Was it within his reach, or was it far from it? Ever since he had heard about the 9 Nether Young Masters' deeds, Jun Moxi had a vague understanding in his heart. Because, whether it was praise or criticism, when it came to the 9 Nether Young Masters, no matter who it was, the basic evaluation was the same. Whether they were crazy or crazy, these people were living their truest selves. Because of this, Jun Moxi suddenly thought of something. Could this be a unique cultivation technique? So after he had this understanding, he specially went to the Hongjun Pagoda's database and flipped through it. At the end, when he reached the highest realm, Jun Moxi came to a conclusion that left him tongue-tied. This was really a realm. This realm was called the True Self. If even the True Self was gone, abandoned, lost, what was the point of talking about cultivating to become a celestial? What was the point of talking about breaking through the void and achieving the great Tao? Therefore, there was another term in Taoist techniques, and that was origin. And the 9 Nether Young Masters that Jun Dashao had truly come into contact with, other than the 9 Nether First Young Master, who he might not have the chance to meet again, was only the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. So, Jun Moxi had tried so many ways to provoke the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' negative emotions. He was making use of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' performance to comprehend his own origin. Now, as the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' emotions became more and more uncontrollable, Jun Moxi's comprehension also increased. In fact, a breakthrough was imminent. The origin of the true self, so that's how it is. Chapter 839. Speaking of this, June Moxie had to thank the three Holy Lands. If it wasn't for the martial saints from the three Holy Lands joining hands to injure 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, and the fact that there were so many martial saints from the three Holy Lands in Chrysanthemum City, preventing this fellow from acting rashly, how would 9 Serenities and 14 Masters be sullenly enduring his anger here? If it wasn't for today's coincidental enlightenment, if June Moxie wanted to understand this realm, who knew how much more effort it would take? The origin of true self wasn't something that could be done as one pleased. Because, no matter how carefree one was, there was a prerequisite: absolute strength. Only when one had enough strength could they do as they pleased. They didn't need to care about anyone's opinion. But the origin of true self was like a newborn baby. Even if it was facing a tiger that could eat it at any time, it would still struggle and cry for milk when it was hungry, but it wouldn't feel fear. This was the true instinct of a human being, and when this instinct was magnified to be able to be like this in any field, it was truly returning to its original state. June Moxie let out a long sigh in his heart. So this was the truth. No wonder there were so few people who succeeded in this world. The reason was actually this. In this world, all those who practiced martial arts pursued nothing more than their own strength, or the cultivation of their mental state that was able to bear the burden of great strength. But intentionally or unintentionally, they had neglected the existence of their own body. This was the so-called origin of true self. But even if one's strength was trained to the peak, and one's cultivation reached the limit, so what? Even the most powerful strength had a prerequisite. Other than the cultivation of the mental state that was needed, there was also a need for a carrier that could bear the weight of these great strength. And this carrier, without exception, was the body of a living being. Just as the Buddhists often said, the physical body of a living being was the precious raft of cultivation. And while most people pursued great strength, they would gradually diverge from this path, walking further and further. In the end, they would lose themselves, and lose the original intention of the origin of true self. That kind of person would no longer be using their power. Instead, they would be using their power in the opposite direction. Just like a dangerous change often mentioned in wuxia novels, people serving in the military, if extended to here, it would be people doing manual labor. In this way, it would be putting the cart before the horse, and the position of the host and guest would be reversed. It would be strange if he could obtain any higher achievements. You're on the verge of chi deviation, yet you still want to climb to a higher peak. That's just a pipe dream. June Moxie seemed to have understood something. His beer had a sudden inspiration, so he didn't want to let it go. He thought hard. What would have happened if we had developed this way from the beginning? There was no doubt that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, as well as the 9 Serenities faction, had been training like this since they were young. That was why they had such great achievement. However, this also had a huge drawback. That was, they would magnify themselves infinitely. Although he was confident, this kind of overconfidence also caused him to become arrogant and crazy, intentionally or unintentionally, because they had always thought that there was absolutely nothing in this world that they couldn't do. They were the strongest, omnipotent. Everyone should crawl under their feet, look up to them, and support them. And in this way, the drawback was relatively more serious. After all, not everyone could reach the achievements of the 9 Nether First Young Master. There was only one person like him since the beginning of time. Although the 9 Nether Young Masters after the 9 Nether First Young Master were all extremely talented, there was still a huge gap between them and the 9 Nether First Young Masters' unparalleled and terrifying strength. When your confidence or arrogance was not enough to match your strength, there could only be one ending: tragedy. This was also why among the 9 Nether Young Masters, only the 9 Nether First Young Master had achieved limitless glory. The other 9 Nether Young Masters had all been buried in history. Actually, Wasn't the Nine Nether first young master himself also a tragedy? He, who was extremely confident and arrogant to the extreme, was still defeated in the hands of another peerless expert in the end. Compared to the other 9 Nether young masters, perhaps he was just luckier and did not encounter a powerful force that could annihilate him in the Xian continent. Jun Dashao had never lacked confidence, but he wasn't overconfident like the other 9 Nether young masters. Confidence was a good thing, but overconfidence was definitely a bad thing. How should one find a balance in this? To allow oneself to develop without restraint, and at the same time be able to judge the situation and recognize one's own position, allowing one's strength and self to develop at the same time. While Jun Dashao was deep in thought, the 9 serenities and 14 masters opposite him was observing him with interest. The 9 Nether 14th young master, who had been enraged by this brat just now, had finally recovered from his anger. He was also an intelligent person, so how could his eyesight not be good? It was only because Jun Mo Xie had spouted a bunch of nonsense that he'd lost his mind earlier, causing him to speak indiscriminately. Young Master Jun's sudden silence caused the 9 Nether 14th young master's eyes and ears to instantly regain clarity. Focusing his attention on the person before him, he was shocked to discover that this brat had suddenly stopped his glib-tongued tongue, and had instead instantly turned into a dignified and profound look. The 9 Nether 14th young master felt as if the person before him had suddenly changed into a completely different person. He even felt an extremely deep and unfathomable feeling, as if he had a sense of déjà vu. This brat actually fell into a state of epiphany right now. He had just finished being talkative and angered himself to the point of puffing smoke out of his 7 orifices, and now he fell into a state of epiphany. This was something that no one could accept. The 9 serenities and 14 masters was truly and thoroughly speechless. This brat, I wonder if he can be even more outrageous? Moreover, this epiphany is a state of epiphany that can only be encountered and not sought. Even this young master wouldn't dare to say that he could have an epiphany just because he wanted to. How important was this? He was actually drinking, chatting, and being talkative here, doing this shameless thing of eating and dashing. Suddenly having an epiphany! Wait a minute. This deep level of strange fluctuation, why does it seem so familiar? I must have seen it somewhere before. The 9 serenities and 14 masters deeply furrowed his brows, and after thinking for a while, he finally remembered. This. How is this possible? Isn't this our 9 serenities tribe's soul shock? Is it really possible for such a fluctuation to appear in the secular world of the Xian continent? Thinking of this, the 9 serenities and 14 masters was immediately shocked. Could it be that this brat is actually a member of the 9 serenities tribe? If that's the case, then there's a reasonable explanation for his insight into my identity. But he recognized me. Why didn't I recognize him? And why is his soul fluctuation so strange? Although it's quite similar to the 9 serenities tribe's mantra, there are still many subtle differences. But it can be considered a different approach to achieve the same result. I'm not dead yet, I'm still here, ready to fight again. If this brat is really a member of the 9 serenities tribe, then how did he come out? Why didn't I feel anything at all? Could it be that the strength of the 9 serenities tribe's descendant is really beyond my imagination? After a long time, Jun Moxie's fingers moved, and he finally woke up from that mysterious state. He actually stretched his body and rubbed his eyes, saying, "This sleep was really comfortable, I haven't slept so well for a long time." Does he think Epiphany is sleeping? The 9 serenities and 14 masters, who was originally in deep thought, instantly had black lines on their faces. The anger that they had just suppressed rose again. "Brat, you're little 15? The 9 serenities and 14 masters asked with a cold face. "Little 15? Jun Moxie was taken aback. "What little 15? Cut the crap. This young master has seen through your identity. How did you come here, brat? The 9 serenities and 14 masters slammed the table and said angrily, Don't you know how to respect your elders? Even if you don't care about the people of this world, you should at least show some respect to me, right? I really don't know how the adults in your family taught you. Hey, I really don't understand what you're talking about. Are you speaking in that country's language? June Moxie shook his head in confusion, but his heart was clear. So this fellow actually thought that I was the 9 nether 15th young master, and saw through my identity? F***ck, I really don't know what he's thinking. Besides, even if this young master uses numbers to name himself, I'll still be the 9 firmament first old master. Why would I be ranked behind you? Brat, look at this. The 9 serenities and 14 masters glared at him fiercely, stretched out his right hand, and placed his 5 fair and slender fingers flat on the table. Suddenly, the color of his fingers slowly changed, turning into a black shadow. It was even shrouded in a layer of floating mist. This mist was milky white. The 9 serenities and 14 masters smiled slightly, and his fingers instantly changed back to their original form. This process was extremely short. Other than the 2 of them, no one else noticed it. This strange transformation was a unique ability of the 9 Nether tribe, guaranteed to be the real deal. Speaking of which, this technique wasn't anything extraordinary. It was a secret technique used to conceal oneself in the dark world of the 9 Nether. But after coming to this world, it was basically useless. However, this unique technique of their clan had also become the best method to distinguish each other. But today, the 9 Nether 14th young master's performance was like throwing flirtatious glances at a blind person, completely wasting his time. Did you see it clearly? Are you still going to pretend in front of me? The 9 serenities and 14 masters looked at June Moxie with a hint of mockery. He leaned back in his chair and looked at him as if he was looking at a junior. How did you get here? Tell me. I saw it clearly, but I'm really speechless. When I said you had epilepsy just now, I was just trying to smooth things over for you. But now I'm really suspecting. June Moxie said gloomily. Don't tell me you really have epilepsy. Brat. The 9 serenities and 14 masters reached out and grabbed June Moxie's wrist. June Moxie didn't dodge and let him grab him. He was laughing so hard in his heart that his intestines were tied up. Finally, I've sorted out my thoughts, and the feeling of writing has returned. There's another thing that I'm excited about. It's finally snowing here today. It's been 4 or 5 months since it's cloudy. This snow came at the right time. So, to celebrate this snow, it will continue to happen today. Chapter 840. So you really aren't. 9 serenities and 14 masters retracted his hand, feeling a little embarrassed. Just now, when he had sent a thread of probing air into June Moxie's meridians, he could clearly feel that the other's profound energy was pure and thick, but it was definitely not the energy unique to the 9 serenities clan. Instead, it was another kind of profound and powerful technique that he had never seen before. The truth was very clear. He had indeed made a huge mistake. But this kid didn't hide or evade, and allowed him to grasp his pulse. This was a rare show of trust. 9 serenities and 14 masters felt a warmth in his heart. In more than 1,000 years, this is the first person to trust me so much, although he probably doesn't know my identity. At this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded from the entrance of Tongguan Hall, where they were facing each other. 2 people walked in side by side. Behind them, another 4 or 5 people entered in a line. June Moxie's pupils shrank slightly, but immediately returned to normal. He picked up his chopsticks and ate heartily, completely unconcerned. 9 serenities and 14 masters' expression was calm and unruffled, as if nothing had happened. Both of them had the same thought at the same time. What a coincidence! We've run into an acquaintance again. The current June Moxie didn't have his original appearance, but he also wasn't that crooked mouth and slanted eyes of the Dongfang tome. As for 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who knew what his original appearance was like, but the people who had come were really acquaintances, and they were even acquaintances of the two of them. The two people in the lead were the Holy Emperor of the Hermitage, Jean Mubai. The other was the Holy Emperor who had led the attack on 9 Serenities and 14 Masters that day, Chao Guofeng of the Misty Mansion. As for the people who came in after them, they were the Holy Emperor surnamed Bai from the Misty Mansion that day, and a few others. Whether it was June Moxie or 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, they all had a deep impression of these people. However, neither of them showed any signs of abnormality. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had yet to recover from their heavy injuries and did not have the ability to protect themselves. Although Jun Dashao was full of vigor and energy, his real strength was not enough. He did not have the qualification to pick a fight with Jun Dashao. If he revealed any flaws in his expression or aura, he would be courting death. The greatest enemies of these three sides had actually gathered at Tongguan Hall in one morning. This could be considered as a miracle. This is Tongguan Hall, Chrysanthemum City's #1 entertainment venue. Whether it's drinking, eating, or watching songs and dances, this place can be considered a top-notch place. The one who spoke was Jean Mubai. As the old ancestor of the Jean family, he was naturally the landlord of Chrysanthemum City. He said with a hint of mockery, "It was here that a few days ago, the song Laughing Proudly in the Pugilistic World was released. In just a few short days, it has spread throughout the world and is well received. It really is a good place." Chao Guofeng smiled elegantly. "Brother Jean, since you're the landlord today, we're going to have a good meal. Today, we'll just talk about the scenery and let us drink to our heart's content. How about it?" Jean Mubai smiled. "Brother Chao, you don't have to shut my mouth first. You should know that at our level, a meal or not is not a big deal. Since I, Jean Mubai, have invited everyone here, naturally I have something to ask of you." Before Chao Guofeng could speak, Jean Mubai gestured with his hand. "Please, upstairs please." Chao Guofeng stood at the door and said, "Why the trouble? Why don't we just stay here? We've been away from the mortal world for many years, why don't we soak up some of the people here? It can also be considered as cultivation." Jean Mubai laughed and said, "Experiencing the lives of the common people in the mortal world is indeed a form of cultivation. We'll do as Brother Chao says." As he said that, everyone randomly found a table in the hall and sat down. Although his words were pleasant to the ear, Jean Mubai still felt slightly unhappy. Chao Guofeng was not willing to go upstairs to talk in detail with him. How could they discuss confidential matters in such a public place? This was equivalent to rejecting his request. It must be known that there were many people here, and it might be inconvenient for ordinary people to discuss matters. But with the abilities of a saint, no matter what environment they were in, it would not affect them. Using telepathy could easily solve all problems. But Chao Guofeng made use of this special environment to tell Jean Mubai in a roundabout way, "The matter you want to talk to me about is very inconvenient, so there's no need to say it." As an old fox who had lived for hundreds of years, his wisdom was superhuman. He could guess what Jean Mubai wanted from him, so he directly closed the door to prevent everyone from feeling awkward. Jean Mubai understood the deeper meaning behind this. The table they chose was coincidentally next to the table where June Moxie and 9 Serenities and 14 Masters were sitting. June Moxie and 9 Serenities and 14 Masters looked at each other, and both of them revealed a somewhat bitter smile. "Since you are not from my hometown, have you seen me before? If you don't know me, then this young master is even more puzzled." 9 Serenities and 14 Masters asked. "How should I put this? Perhaps I can say that the biggest reason why I'm talking to you is because I'm as paranoid as you are. Jun Mo Xie had suppressed his cultivation to the silver Xian level. However, he didn't conceal his voice. So, he spoke like a normal person. I'm overly suspicious. So, I saw a suspicious foreigner like you suddenly appear here. So, I naturally had to interrogate you. And because you're also paranoid, you naturally think too much. Because I'm paranoid. 9 serenities and 14 masters laugh. That's right. The biggest shortcoming of humans was that they were too suspicious. Because of their suspicions, they missed out on too many things and even destroyed their own happiness, family, and career. But then again, it was also because of their suspicions and cautiousness that many people could achieve something. This is the best explanation I've heard. Let's drink to the word, paranoid. What a good word! Ha ha ha, since ancient times, whether it's emperors, generals, ministers, or peerless experts, who isn't paranoid? Brother, your paranoid theory is really to my liking. Let's drink. A hearty laughter came from the side. This old man will also drink with you. Please. The one who spoke was actually Chao Guofeng. He looked at Jun Moxie and 9 serenities and 14 masters with a sympathetic look on his face. When his eyes fell on Jun Moxie, he suddenly paused. Then, his eyes flashed with extreme shock. He rubbed his eyes without anyone noticing and continued to look at Jun Moxie suspiciously. His eyes slowly turned into a look of ecstasy. Chao Guofeng's words immediately attracted the close attention of the other experts. Young Master Jun and the old man simultaneously felt 7 to 8 powerful spiritual senses wrapping around their bodies, sweeping through every pore of their bodies, some even lingering there for a long time. Jun Moxie sensitively felt that there was something wrong with Chao Guofeng's eyes. Could it be that he had discovered something? The two maintained their calm expressions, as if they were completely unaware of the interweaving divine senses. They nodded with a smile and drank the wine in one gulp. Brother Chao seems to be in a good mood. Zhang Mubai immediately understood what was going on with his divine sense. There were 2 people at the table beside them. The young man in white could be considered a talent in the eyes of the secular world. He was young but already had a silver Xian cultivation, which was quite rare. However, he was not enough to enter the eyes of saint-level experts like them. As for the man in black opposite them, he was just an ordinary person. There was nothing special about him. Chao Guofeng's unexpected words were clearly an attempt to change the topic, leaving him with no room to turn the situation around. This made Zhang Mubai very displeased. He retracted his divine sense and decided to be straightforward. Brother Chao, I believe you know what I mean. Although I've been away from the world for a long time, I'm still a member of the Zhan family. My life's wish is for the family to be able to multiply and prosper. Right now, I only want one of my descendants to become Brother Chao's disciple. Why must Brother Chao be so persistent? If we can form a good relationship with each other, it will be beneficial for both of us. Chao Guofeng's expression changed instantly, turning from cheerful to serious. He slowly put down his wine cup and sighed. Brother Zhan, since you've made it clear, then I'll be frank with you. You should know that the Zhan family belongs to the elusive world of immortals. And our misty mansion can accept people from anywhere, but we must not snatch the resources of the 3 holy lands. You know the reason behind this, and so do I. Are you forcing me, or am I being too persistent? This matter involves the teachings of our ancestors. Brother Zhan's insistence is going against your original intentions, isn't it? How would I not know the reason behind this? Zhang Mubai's expression became helpless. It is not that I am being overbearing and forcing you, but this matter. I really need Brother Chao's help. That descendant of mine has the Xian Yin Death Meridian. Looking at the current situation, only the warm Yang Xian Qi created by Brother Chao's sect can slowly heal him. Also, Only by becoming Brother Chao's disciple and resolving the Xian-Yin death meridian can he transform the Xian-Yin Qi of Tian-Xian into the purest warm Yang Xian Qi and create an unprecedented Xian Qi. If Brother Chao is not willing to help me, the Xian-Yin Qi in my descendant's body cannot be resolved, and he will not live past 30 years old. Chao Guofeng held his wine cup and was silent for a while before saying, Brother Jean, the noble Jean family has many branches and leaves now. There should be at least a few thousand people. As the ancestor of the Jean family, Brother Jean should be aloof and treat everyone equally. But why are you so fond of this young man? You are willing to lower yourself to ask me for help? Chapter 841. So that's how it is. Chao Guofeng suddenly understood. Ancestors like them valued their own bloodline very much, which was not something that outsiders could imagine. So, when Jean Mubai said it, he immediately understood. But because he understood, his face showed an even more difficult expression. If he helped, he would be going against the ancestral teachings of the Misty Mansion. If he didn't help, once Jean Mubai's bloodline ended, he would greatly offend Jean Mubai. From now on, he would be making a strong enemy for no reason. Even if he wasn't afraid, it would still be a great trouble. What should he do? No matter how he chose, it was wrong. There were advantages to being in public. When Jean Mubai said this, he didn't lower his voice at all and said it openly. Everyone present heard it, which made Chao Guofeng even more unable to retreat. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters and Jun Moxie, who happened to hear this conversation, naturally understood. The two looked at each other, and they couldn't help but gloat. They didn't expect that Jean Mubai, the dignified Holy Emperor, would be facing a crisis that would soon end his bloodline. The warm yang mysterious art passed down by my sect, if it was practiced with the extreme opposite mysterious Yin meridian as the foundation, it would undoubtedly be the best. Chao Guofeng said awkwardly. But it still needs to be built on the foundation of resolving it over a long period of time. And the process of resolving it, it needs to be resolved bit by bit as the mysterious Yin meridian progresses, and after resolving it, it needs to be transformed into one's own Xian Qi using a unique mental cultivation method. As for turning all the meridians of the whole body from mysterious Yin to warm Yang, it would at least take more than 30 years. This period of time is quite long, and both the master and disciple would need to pay a lot of effort. Because our sect's mysterious art is unusual, it has always been passed down to only one person. This old man hasn't accepted a disciple for hundreds of years, and is choosing a successor. If Brother Jean brought it up before today, then no matter how difficult it would be for me, I would still agree to it. But Chao Guofeng laughed helplessly and said, putting aside the teachings of our ancestors, this old man has unexpectedly discovered another strange physique. This is the disciple that all Xian cultivation masters dream of having, the free and natural physique. And this person with the free and natural physique is right in front of me. This old man can't help but be moved. Free and natural physique? Was it really the free and natural physique? Who was it? Where is it? This time, not only did Jean Mubai notice it, but all the other experts of the Holy Emperor couldn't help but ask. Each of them revealed an extremely shocked expression, and some of them even had a fiery look in their eyes. However, they couldn't be blamed for making a fuss over nothing. Rather, the so-called free and natural physique was simply too rare. That was an innate cultivation genius. Regardless of whether it was his soul, bones, muscles, or meridians, they were all in an innate state of emptiness, completely untainted. And this kind of innate talent was something that could only be encountered by chance and not sought after. Because no matter what kind of physique this person was born with, when they were just born, they would naturally be in this special state. But after a few days, they would be tainted by the food they ingested or their breathing. This was something that no one could be exempted from. However, these Xian cultivation masters couldn't possibly wait outside every delivery room of a pregnant woman. Besides, even if they waited for 1,000,000 pregnant women, they might not even meet a single infant with the free and natural physique. So this had always been a legend. In the entire 10,000 years of the Xian continent, there had only been one. It was only because the 9 Nether First Young Masters' handwritten legacy had mentioned this kind of talent that no one doubted it, and this illusory legend was passed down. If an infant with the free and natural physique really appeared in front of these experts of the Holy Emperor, these Holy Emperor experts who were still drinking with them a moment ago would probably start fighting over it. The handwritten legacy of the 9 Nether First Young Master was very clear. As long as he was nurtured according to a special method, once he grew up, he would be able to rise to the level of a saint within 50 years. A 50-year-old saint. This could no longer be described as a miracle. It was directly a miracle, a mark that belonged to God. And this achievement was only the beginning. There was no limit to this person's future achievements. In other words, as long as this miracle was given enough time to grow, he would become the #1 person in the world. This was a matter that brought glory to his ancestors and brought glory to the world. The future #1 expert in the world. If anyone really took in such a disciple, then he would be the master of the #1 expert in the world. At that time, what would the glory of the Holy Emperor amount to? The reason why no one doubted this illusory and unsubstantiated legend was because the 9 Nether First Young Master had admitted in his handwritten legacy that he himself was a practitioner with the free and natural physique. What kind of achievements did the 9 Nether First Young Master have? That was the pinnacle of Xian cultivation that no one had ever been able to surpass. The ancestor of all Xian cultivators in the Xian continent. The ultimate existence that all Xian cultivators looked up to since the beginning of time. Everyone's breathing became heavy as they stared at Chao Guofeng like searchlights. From the looks of it, if Chao Guofeng continued to remain silent, everyone would gang up on him in the next moment. Chao Guofeng smiled bitterly, a look of sincere regret on his face. In a moment of carelessness, he had blurted it out. Right now, he really had the urge to bang his head against the wall and die. With great difficulty, he said, "Everyone here already has their own inheritors, so there's no need to fight with me for it. Furthermore, I can't really confirm it now. It's just a vague guess." Vague guess? Who is it? Whose child is it? Jean Mubai's fair face was flushed red as he asked. Others might be too embarrassed to snatch it, but he, Jean Mubai, had all his inheritors with the surname Jean, so they were naturally his descendants. His family's martial arts couldn't be considered snatching a disciple, right? If he could have a prodigy with the free and natural physique as his disciple and have that kind of supreme glory, this kind of thing, Jean Mubai could practically faint from happiness just thinking about it. If he could have this kind of glory, so what if he really had to go extinct? Far in the horizon, but close at hand. This person with the free and natural physique is him. Chao Guofeng looked at everyone's gazes that looked like they wanted to eat him up, and he felt even more helpless. He understood that if he didn't say it now, he would offend all 7 of them. And they would also keep a close watch on him, so his wish would also not be fulfilled. Helpless, he pointed with his finger. Everyone looked over, and instantly saw an extremely shocked face that had reached an extreme point. Under everyone's gaze, that face instantly collapsed, turning into a bitter gourd. This finger of Chao Guofeng's was actually pointing at Jun Dashao. The 9 serenities and 14 masters paused for a moment, then suddenly burst into laughter and spat out a mouthful of tea, splattering it all over the dumbfounded Jun Moxie's face. In an instant, Jun Moxie was flustered, and he almost wanted to beat this fellow to death with his fist. "This young master is wearing a mask. What's with your spit? If my real face is exposed, then wouldn't I be dead for sure?" He hurriedly wiped it carefully. This was really scary. Even if the mask didn't fall off, but if it was wrinkled, then he would be dead for sure. Luckily, this kind of movie plot didn't happen, although the situation in front of him was already very movie. But luck wouldn't accompany a person for too long, and a situation that was even worse than a movie plot appeared. The next moment, 7 to 8 men's big hands reached over at the same time, and before Jun Dashao could react, his whole body was grabbed by those holy emperor's men and placed on the table. All of them widened their eyes and studied him. They looked at Jun Dashao's body with burning eyes, as if they were looking at a top-grade beauty. Luckily, he had his clothes to cover it, or else what would have happened? Chao Guofeng was very surprised and surprised. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that when he casually came out to socialize with Zhang Mubai and casually changed the topic with a few words, he would actually discover a treasure. He was really too lucky. Among the two people who were talking, the young man in white actually had the legendary free and natural physique, which was 1 in a billion. At first glance, Chao Guofeng almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. Then, he looked carefully a few more times before he finally confirmed, it was really him. Oh my God, it's really him. At that moment, Chao Guofeng almost had a blood rush to his head. Oh heavens, oh earth, which fairy sister did such a good thing? To actually allow such a miracle to appear in front of him. Luckily, this old man didn't take in any disciples all these years, or else, my lineage will always be a single disciple. Pooey, so what if I take in disciples? At most, I'll chase all the disciples I took in before out of the sect. As long as I can take in this person in front of me as my disciple, no matter how big the price is, it's all worth it. So, ever since he discovered this super genius, Chao Guofeng's brain was obviously not enough to use. His words were also very incoherent, and he was only thinking about how he could bring this person back without anyone noticing. One must know that in this world, there were many people who were jealous of the talented. Even if it was him, if he saw someone else taking in such a disciple, his heart would also feel unbalanced. But because of his absent-mindedness, he finally made a mistake. This fellow, Zhang Mubai, actually brought up the physique of his descendant. Chao Guofeng didn't even consider it and only rejected him. But in a moment of carelessness, he actually spat out the words free and natural physique. At the moment he spat it out, Chao Guofeng almost had the urge to commit suicide on the spot to thank his ancestors. What did I say just now? I actually spilled out that secret. I deserve to die. Chapter 842. Chao Guofeng was still very confident in his own lifespan. He felt that with his level 3 Holy Emperor Xian cultivation, living for another 300 years was definitely not a big problem, and with the free and natural physique, he could become a saint at 50 years old. Then, 300 years. No matter what, it would still be stronger than him, right? But looking at the entire world, how many people would dare to say that they were stronger than him? Even if he raised 5 fingers, he still had to bend down too. But in his absent-minded state, he blurted out the words that came out of his mouth. This way there was no longer any room for concealment. At this moment, how could he still have any apologetic feelings towards Zhang Mubai? Chao Guofeng was so depressed that he wanted to slap Zhang Mubai to death. You actually want me to take in your grandchildren of God knows how many generations as my disciple? Dream on. Is that Xian Yin death meridians of yours that amazing? If you're willing to die, die early and reincarnate, why aren't you dead yet? Die early and don't be a burden to others. Zhang Mubai, you damned old fool, you deserve to die 1,000 times. It's you. You've ruined so many things for me. May the heavens bless you to have no descendants. To have no descendants, Chao Guofeng really had the urge to go berserk, but he still had to maintain a good impression in front of his future disciple. He forced himself to put on a benevolent and sage-like appearance, but in his stomach, even his intestines were about to break. My heavens, it's actually true. It's really the legendary free and natural physique. A saint emperor screamed in shock. His tone was like a young girl in love who had suddenly seen her idol, or a Buddhist who had suddenly seen the living Gautama Buddha. The table was already clean, leaving only a lifeless Jun Dashao sitting on it, like a plate of food, his face filled with helplessness. There were a total of 8 saint emperors around him. 16 piercing gazes scanned his entire body. To put it in an inappropriate way, even if a great beauty were to strip naked and stand in the crowd, she might not be able to make these 8 saint emperors show such focused expressions and gazes. Jun Dashao's charisma was evident. Although his clothes were still neat and tidy, Jun Moxie felt as if he had been stripped naked. He couldn't help but want to cry, but no tears came out. I've been seen through by 8 old demons who have lived for who knows how many years. Why is my life so bitter? At this moment, he suddenly experienced the feeling that the 9 serenities and 14 masters had when they were furious at him but could not do anything about it. This was real karma. It wasn't that he wouldn't report it, but it wasn't time yet. Once the time came, he would immediately report it. Moreover, it was reported in such a shocking and embarrassing manner. Help! Who would have thought that a casual meal would cause so much trouble? These were 8 holy emperors. They were all top experts who stood at the pinnacle of the world, judging him as if he was a piece of pork, and the way they looked at him was filled with naked greed. F***ck. Do they think this young master is Tripitaka's meat? Actually, these people had all seen wrongly. Jun Moxie definitely did not have the free and natural physique. Just this body alone, before the evil monarch had possessed it, was a trash body that couldn't be any more trash. It couldn't even be considered as a talent. The free and natural physique was indeed rare. Since ancient times, there was only the 9 nether first young master who had it. But these people didn't know that although Jun Moxie's physique was not the free and natural physique, it was even rarer than the free and natural physique. In fact, it was more than a level higher. Who could use the purest heaven and earth spiritual chi to cleanse their body every day. He could even do it dozens of times a day. Who could cleanse their tendons and marrow every day. Every hour I'm being reborn again? Who would be able to cultivate using the best cultivation method in the world since ancient times? Who could use the #1 treasure in the world, the Hongjun Pagoda, to assist them day and night? What was even more shocking was that who could possess an endless supply of primordial violet chi. That was a heaven-defying thing that even deities could only dream of. Under the nourishment of such a long period of time, Jun Moxie's body could no longer be described with the word talent. Right now, he was even more valuable than Tripitaka's meat. Jun Moxie had concealed his body's condition very well. But he didn't know if it was because his luck was too bad, or he had brought this upon himself. He had unscrupulously provoked the 9 nether 14th young master, and because of this, he had comprehended the essence of the great Tao of the true self. But at the same time, because of this comprehension, his mental state was greatly different from before, even fluctuating slightly. And just as he finished his enlightenment, Zhang Mubai came in with Chao Guofeng and the rest. If it was any other holy emperor, he would have just glanced at him and ignored him as a secular genius. But the person who came was Chao Guofeng. The main focus of Chao Guofeng's cultivation was the variation of Xian Qi, and it had always been passed down to only one person. Chao Guofeng was already several hundred years old, but he had yet to find a satisfactory successor to inherit his legacy. This holy Emperor Chao was now like a hungry wolf, looking for those so-called geniuses with his green eyes. Chao Guofeng's aptitude could be considered excellent, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to cultivate to the level of the holy emperor. But his physique had not reached the level of the most special Xiantian physiques. Chao Guofeng's cultivation had reached the limit of the holy emperor's level, and he believed that he wouldn't be able to make any more breakthroughs in his cultivation for the rest of his life. Compared to his master, he was still a few levels lower. This was also the greatest regret of his life. Therefore, Chao Guofeng swore that no matter what, he would find a successor with exceptional aptitude who could surpass his ancestors to pass down his sect's cultivation technique. Today, he had coincidentally come to Tongguan Hall, and it was like rain after a long drought. Seeing the legendary free and natural physique, Chao Guofeng's eyes were naturally red, and his heart was boiling. Right now, Holy Emperor Chao had already made up his mind. No matter what, he had to take this disciple under his wing. Even if he had to break off relations with his old friends of hundreds of years, or even become enemies, he would not hesitate. Among the 8 holy emperors, there were at least 3 others who had the same idea as Chao Guofeng. One of them was the one who had ambushed Jun Moxi, Zhang Mubai, Holy Emperor Zhang. But today, Zhang Mubai was destined to have no chance, because he had come alone to ensure that his grandson could be taken in as a disciple by Chao Guofeng of the Misty Mansion. As long as Chao Guofeng agreed, Zhang Mubai would also prepare a generous gift for the other 6. It was not only to shut their mouths, but also to ensure that his great-great-great-grandchildren would receive the best care and benefits in the Misty Mansion. But now that they had encountered such a good thing, Zhang Mubai was absolutely alone. The other 7 were holy emperors, and they all belonged to the Misty Mansion. The disparity in strength was clear as day. When Jun Dashao was being groped by the 8 holy emperors, he had wanted to use the yin-yang escape to escape. But in that instant a strange thought appeared in his mind. And it was this thought that stopped Jun Moxi from taking any further action. The words that Mei Shiyan had said previously rang in Jun Moxi's mind. In the Misty Mansion, there is a rainbow holy tree. The fruits of the rainbow holy tree are divided into 7 colors, and they are known as the rainbow holy fruits. And in the Heaven Saint Palace of the 3 Holy Lands, there is a heavenly saint lotus pond, and in the pond, there is a 9-segment exquisite lotus. 1 rainbow holy fruit of each color, and when consumed together with the petals of the 9-segment exquisite lotus, it will increase one's profound qi by 500 years. Furthermore, it will allow the person who consumes it to maintain his appearance for 500 years. He will be able to maintain the appearance of the moment he consumes it. Guan Qing Han and Duguxiaoyi, as well as his mother. This matter had always been in Jun Moxi's mind, and he had never forgotten it. But the Misty Mansion had always been extremely mysterious. Forget about stealing the rainbow holy tree. He didn't even have a clue how to enter it, or perhaps today's matter was an opportunity? It all depended on how he would use it. But no matter what, he couldn't just block off this path. Jun Moxi anxiously pondered in his heart, temporarily forgetting the awkwardness of being watched by others. Kid, what's your name? How old are you this year? Who is your master? Who did you cultivate with? Where is your home? Who else is there in your home? You? Countless questions came out from the mouths of the 8 holy emperors at the same time. For a moment, Jun Moxi was overwhelmed, and he simply didn't know whose question he should answer first. After a series of twists and turns, he finally managed to think of a way to deal with this round of questioning. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. For his own long-term plans, this white lie of Jun Moxi's satisfied the 8 holy emperors. He was an orphan, lonely since he was young, and his master was a warrior named Yu Xian. They only had each other to depend on. As for the profound question of how his physique could still maintain the free and natural physique after growing so big, Jun Moxi also gave them a puzzled look. It was said that when he was young, he grew up in a tiger's den, and he didn't know anything else. Question: have you ever eaten anything? Answer: when I was young, I saw a white stone on the mountain that suddenly broke, and there was water in it. So I drank the water, and it was said that I was in a coma for a few days before waking up. Thus, all the holy emperors came to a sudden realization. 16 bright eyes looked at June Moxie, and they exclaimed in unison, "No wonder! So it's the legendary Spirit Stone, Immortal Milk. Maybe it's the top-grade Spirit Stone, Immortal Milk, that's hundreds of millions of years old. If that's the case, everything can be explained." Thus, all of them looked at June Moxie with even more fervent gazes. This is really a miracle. The free and natural physique was originally already a legendary realm, but this young man with the free and natural physique had actually drunk something that only existed in the legends before. Spirit Stone, Immortal Milk. As long as this young man could find a master, his future achievements would simply be indescribable. The eyes of the 8 holy emperors turned green and then blue. Towards the original master of this genius, Yu Xian, the 8 holy emperors were cursing the heavens in their hearts. What kind of rubbish standard is this? It's simply a waste of a heavenly gift. Taking in a disciple with the unique physique in the entire world, and after training him for a few years, he's actually only at the Silver Xian level. This master's incompetence has already reached a point that makes one's hair stand on end. Chapter 843. It seemed that as long as it was Jun Dashao's master, he would become the enemy of the Holy Emperor, whether it was before or now. What a tragedy! Jun Moxie looked at his table through the crowd. Sure enough, 9 serenities and 14 masters had disappeared without a trace. This guy has no sense of loyalty. Can't he see that I'm already in such a miserable state? He only cares about running away. You guys have completely messed up my plan. Jun Dashao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It wasn't easy for him to meet the 9 nether 14th young master, and he was Jun Mo-Xie's number 1 trump card. In the midst of their conversation, Jun Mo-Xie had already discovered a strange phenomenon. No matter where the 9 nether 14th young master went, the heaven-earth spiritual qi in the surroundings would automatically gather around him. In other words, even if this guy did not use his martial arts, he was always in a state of healing. According to Jun Moxie's estimation, although this guy was seriously injured before, he should have recovered a lot by now. Although it was still difficult to make a move now, it should not be a big problem in a few days. With such a terrifying recovery speed, those injuries were definitely not a big problem for him. One had to know that in that battle in Tian Fa Forest, the injuries that the 9 nether 14th young master had suffered were enough to scare anyone to death. Just the position of his heart alone had been pierced through by 2 swords, and the 3rd sword had even pierced through all his internal organs. Moreover, there were countless other scars on his body. Any one of those scars on an ordinary person would have been reincarnated long ago, but this guy was still alive and kicking. He had even traveled thousands of miles to become a fanatic. Based on this guy should be able to exert a considerable amount of combat power in a few days. When that time comes, if there are enemies that I can't deal with, I can just shift the blame to someone else. Wouldn't that be great? In the past, Chu Chihuan was always the scapegoat. Now that it was someone else, wasn't it good? This was Jun Moxie's grand plan. However, this perfect plan had obviously died in the womb. At the very least, it would not be used in the short term. Even if he could escape now, it was impossible to find someone like the 9 nether 14th young master in the huge Chrysanthemum City, unless he took the initiative to look for her. His luck was simply rotten to the max. Looking at the 8 agitated Saint Emperors in front of him, Jun Mo-Xie felt as if he couldn't vent his anger. Alright, since you've treated the god of killing as Tripitaka's flesh, I'll give you a good surprise. Finally, the 8 holy emperors also felt that it was inappropriate to leave Jun Moxie on the table, so they took him down and sat him on a chair. The 8 of them looked at each other in dismay. Finally, I say, kid, this old man sees that your aptitude is not bad. Are you willing to accept this old man as your master? This old man is the ancestor of the Zhan family, the holy emperor of the pugilistic world. As long as you follow me, you can have whatever you want. Glory, splendor, wealth, and rank are endless. After a moment of stalemate, Jean Moubai was the most thick-skinned. He took the initiative to speak first, wanting to gain the upper hand. He had no choice but to be anxious. The other 7 were all enemies. How could he compete with the 7 of them alone? However, this kid was still immortal. Perhaps glory, splendor, wealth, and rank could move him. At the very least, he could give it a try. As long as this kid nodded his head, he would pick him up and leave. But before Jean Moubai finished speaking, he was interrupted. What do you mean as long as I follow you? Splendor, wealth, and rank? I say, old man Jean, why do you sound like you're looking for a concubine? How can the mundane things of the mortal world enter my eyes? Kid, don't listen to him. This old man is lecherous, shameless, and despicable. He's the first-class scoundrel. Or this old man was called the Holy Sword Scholar. My reputation is resounding. I'm full of righteousness, and my Xian cultivation is strong. The one who spoke was the Holy Emperor of the Misty Mansion. Just now, he called Jean Moubai Brother Jean. Now that there was a conflict of interest, his tone changed. In his mouth, Jean Moubai became a lecherous, shameless, despicable scoundrel. This change in roles was really fast. His mentality changed rapidly, and his words did not leave any leeway. There was no other reason. It was because the aptitude of this young man in front of him had really reached a heaven-defying level. Although his current cultivation was only at the silver Xian level, the meridians in his body were exquisite and without any obstruction. This also meant that no matter what kind of Xian cultivation or level it was, there would be no bottlenecks to speak of for him. Which martial artist doesn't have any bottlenecks? Although the 8 people present were all Holy Emperor experts, their cultivation was still the accumulation of hundreds of years. And in their hundreds of years of cultivation, at least 2/3 of their long years were used to break through layers of bottlenecks. Without any bottlenecks, what kind of monster would that be? No one dared to even think about it. Although the 9 Nether First Young Master had left a letter as proof, and no one doubted its authenticity, but after all, it had been tens of thousands of years, and no one had seen it. Everyone had only treated it as the most beautiful legend. But now, the legend had come true. There was such a superhuman monster right in front of them. With this kind of heaven-defying aptitude, with just pure accumulation, he would be able to smoothly reach the level of the Holy Emperor. This kind of heaven-defying aptitude might not be unprecedented, but it was the only one in the tens of thousands of years since the 9 Nether First Young Master. It could be predicted that in the future it might not be seen again. It was definitely something that could only be encountered and not sought. The 8 old men moved at the same time. Their greedy eyes locked onto Jun Moxie. When had Jun Dashao ever been timid? It was not an exaggeration to say that he was extremely daring. But today, right before his eyes, he was really trembling. He was really a little afraid. Honestly speaking, anyone would be afraid. A young lad surrounded by 8 old monsters that were hundreds of years old, filled with desire, anticipation, and greedy gazes that refused to let go. Who wouldn't be afraid? After arguing for a while, everyone was in a stalemate, but no one was willing to let go. It would be weird if such a prodigy was willing to let go. Enough, where's the commotion? What kind of status do we have? We're already so old, and you still want to snatch a disciple for no reason? To think that you guys would do such a tasteless thing. Don't let the younger generation laugh at us. Chao Guofeng furrowed his brows and said, which one of you doesn't have a bunch of disciples and grand-disciples? This old man is still a loner, and you guys still have the cheek to snatch with me. I believe that only this old man can focus on nurturing this child. Let him have the best development. Everyone rolled their eyes. If he had an ordinary aptitude, or even a few types of genius physiques, we wouldn't fight with you. But this is the free and natural physique. Who wouldn't be jealous? You keep saying that you want us to develop our style, but why don't you develop it yourself? Only you can focus on nurturing him? That's bullsh*t. If there was such a disciple, who wouldn't focus on nurturing him? Even if they had to expel all their previous disciples, they wouldn't hesitate. Brother Chow's words are reasonable. Such a genius indeed needs to be focused on nurturing. It's just that although Brother Chow doesn't have a disciple, he has a high position in the Misty Mansion and is busy with work, unlike this old man who has nothing better to do. This old man also doesn't have a disciple worthy of inheriting my legacy. Jean Mubai smiled and said, Brother Chow, why don't you let this little brother have him? With Brother Chow's capabilities, you'll definitely be able to find a better one in the future. That descendant of mine is actually not bad as well. He's born with the black N-terminal meridians, and is suitable for Brother Chow's unique mental cultivation technique. What do you think? Chow Guofeng rolled his eyes and directly interrupted, Better? Jean Mubai, there's no need to find one. As long as you name a physique better than the free and natural physique, this old man will immediately give him to you. Not only do you want to take this child for yourself, you even want this old man to worry about that sickly great-grandson of yours. What are you thinking? Do all the good things belong to you? Jean Mubai said embarrassedly, Brother Chow, are you really so unreasonable? Forget it, it's fine if you don't want to take my great-grandson as a disciple, I won't force you. But now, you even want to snatch a disciple from this old man? Brother Chow, as a person, you have to be reasonable, right? You can't let this old man die without a descendant and also lose my legacy. Chow Guofeng almost fainted in a single breath. He gritted his teeth and said, Jean Mubai, to think that you can say such shameless words. How is this old man unreasonable? The physique of that great-grandson of yours is not something I can decide. That's his parents' fault. This old man is willing to accept your great-grandson as a favor, but not because it's fair. This is the real reason. Not to mention other things, there are thousands of people in your Jean family. Which one of them isn't your descendant? Today, this old man has been searching for over 700 years, and you actually say that the descendant is yours? Do you still have any shame? Who is the unreasonable one here? Let everyone here judge. If it was an ordinary person, this old man wouldn't fight for it. But this lad's physique is definitely not inferior to that monster, Jun Moxie. This old man will not give up on such a talent no matter what. Could it be that Brother Chow is relying on the fact that everyone here is an expert from your Misty Mansion to bully me and force me to accept him as my disciple? Jean Mubai had directly started to act shamelessly. Not only did he directly accuse the Misty illusory manner of wanting to bully someone, he even directly turned young Master Jun into his disciple. The speed of this change in identity was truly godly. Chow Guofeng's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that that monster, Jun Moxie, also has the free and natural physique? Just what kind of physique does that scoundrel Jun Moxie have? We didn't investigate it in detail previously because we didn't have the time to do so, but that brat, Jun Moxie, had indeed reached the second-level venerable realm before the age of 18. This is a fact that everyone can see for themselves. Brother Chow, even if he has the guidance of a famous teacher, with this kind of advancement speed, what kind of physique do you think he has? Jean Mubai snorted and said, and this lad in front of us, although he is only 18 or 19 years old, he is still a piece of rough gold and unpolished jade. The only thing he lacks is the guidance of a famous teacher. If he goes through this old man's training, he might not be any weaker than Jun Moxie. In fact, he might even be stronger. This old man has this confidence. Who knows, he might even be the second nether first young master. You have this confidence, but do you think I don't? The three holy lands are fighting for power, creating such a foul atmosphere in the world. If I really give this lad to you, it will definitely be a waste. No matter what you say, there will be no room for discussion. Chao Guofeng had already made up his mind. This disciple of his, he would not let go no matter what. Chapter 844. Jun Moxie was already dead. No matter how good his aptitude was, it was all in the past. And this kid in front of him, in terms of aptitude, he believed that there was no one in the world who could match him. How could Chao Guofeng allow such a talent to slip away from his hands? This was the future #1 expert. Chao Guofeng, you're really going too far. What right do you have to say that a talent in my hands is a waste? Zhang Mubai revealed a look of anger and humiliation. Today, no matter what, you have to give me an explanation. He had already made up his mind. He didn't care anymore. He just needed to find an opportunity to snatch the person and leave. If they were to fall out with each other, then so be it. As long as he could snatch this heaven-defying kid, everything would be worth it. At most, he would give up on Hermitage, or even the entire Zhan family, find a secret place to hide and focus on training his disciple. This was related to the glory of the future. Any sacrifice was worth it. Although the other 6 people in front of him also had great intentions, Chao Guofeng was ultimately the leader of the Misty Mansion's operation this time. They might not really fight to the end. At the end of the day, the competition now was only between him and Chao Guofeng. He who strikes first has the advantage. That, old sirs, can you allow this junior to say a few words? A weak voice came from the side. It was Jun Dashao. They were arguing here, and Jun Dashao's eyes were also moving around, not stopping at all. He was thinking about how to get out of this awkward situation, and even gain an advantage. Speak. Chao Guofeng and Zhang Mubai spoke at the same time. They were determined to fight for a good impression in the eyes of their future disciple. My master once solemnly warned this junior that if I want to be a master, the first thing to do is to have amazing skills. Why do the two of you have to argue endlessly? Anyway, this junior is here and can't run away. I think if it's not you, then it'll be him. Since I want to be his disciple, then I naturally have to choose a stronger one. Why don't the two of you spar on the spot? It'll be clear who's stronger and who's weaker. I think the loser will have nothing to say, right? Jun Moxie cowered and said with some hesitation, "Huh!" Hearing these words, the two of them were moved at the same time. These words were very reasonable. How could the losers have any room to compete? They couldn't help but be filled with fighting spirit. They looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. That's right, that's right. The victor is king and the winner calls the shots. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to accept your loss. This is indeed a good way to resolve this conflict. The other 6 people jeered at the same time. They were naturally very confident in Chao Guofeng. Chao Guofeng was a level 3 holy emperor. Although Zhang Mubai was not ordinary, he was only a level 2 holy emperor. This was a rather large gap between them. Using a martial arts competition to decide who his disciple would belong to was tantamount to placing Chao Guofeng in an invincible position. Sweat broke out on Zhang Mubai's face. He gritted his teeth and the words, "Let's fight," were stuck in his throat, but he couldn't say them. If they really fought this battle, he would definitely lose for sure, and the relationship between the 3 holy lands and Chao Guofeng's group would also be destroyed because of this. There's no need to rush this matter. Brother Chao, there's still some time before the deadline for you to return to the Misty Mansion. Why don't we use this time to see this kid's ability to accept and consider it? If this kid only has talent and doesn't have the corresponding perception, then it's a waste of time. As for who's going to take him in as a disciple, we can discuss this matter later. How about it? Zhang Mubai could be considered to be a sly old fox. With a flash of inspiration, he spoke out a reasonable argument. That's fine too. Chao Guofeng also understood that this was not a good time to fall out with Zhang Mubai. If there was no way to turn things around, then he would just take action. However, Zhang Mubai had already softened his tone. If he insisted, then he wouldn't be on his side anymore. Thus, he reluctantly agreed. But at the same time he agreed, he also thought that when Zhang Mubai returned this time, he would definitely contact the other holy emperors of the 3 holy lands to pressure him. It would be difficult for him to do anything alone. The longer this dragged on, the worse it would be for him. Turning around, he looked at the 6 saint emperors who had come with him and said solemnly, "My 6 brothers, we've all come out together and seen such a fine talent. If I'm the only one who takes advantage of this, I'll feel very apologetic. I also know that my brothers think highly of this child. How about this, if I'm fortunate enough to take this child as my disciple in the future, then other than being my successor, he'll have to treat the 6 of you like a disciple as well. In other words, not only will he be my successor, he'll also be the disciple of the 7 of us. My 6 brothers, what do you think?" His words not only occupied the dominant position, but also gave the 6 of them a huge favor. It could be said that he had done a lot of favors. Moreover, he was confident that none of the 6 of them would reject him. What a joke, this was the master of the future #1 expert in the world. Even if it was just a nominal master, it was still a great achievement and glory. Sure enough, when the 6 of them saw that the 2 of them were fighting fiercely, all of them had the intention to retreat. All of them already had the thought of, "It's none of our business, so let's just ignore it," and avoided it. At this moment, when they unexpectedly heard Chao Guofeng's explanation, they felt that the situation had taken a turn for the better, and they couldn't help being overjoyed. "Brother Chao, are you serious? What's there to be serious about? Do you really think I'm willing to share this good disciple with others?" Chao Guofeng laughed bitterly. "In this situation, if we don't join hands, this disciple will be snatched away by the 3 holy lands. This is their territory after all. A strong dragon cannot suppress a snake in its territory. If they really succeed, then in at most 100 or 200 years, our misty mansion's transcendent position will be lost. Whether it's for the inheritance or the misty mansion, the 7 of us must escort this genius back to the misty mansion. Although this old man still has the intention to monopolize him, no matter what, I'm still a part of the misty mansion. I must also do my best for the future of the misty mansion." He paused for a while and said, "A real man does not regret his words. Since I said that he is the common disciple of the 7 of us, then from now on, there will be no change. My only request is that this disciple is this old man's successor. This old man only has this one request. I hope everyone can agree to it." When he said this, it was enough to show his sincerity. The other 6 people felt ashamed at the same time, thinking that they had indeed neglected the big picture. Although this disciple had to have the title of Chao Guofeng's successor, he was still the disciple of the 6 of them. This was much better than before. They could not help but say, "Brother Chao's request is definitely not a problem. You can rest assured. Since he is the common disciple of the 7 of us, then even if the 3 holy lands want to snatch him, we brothers are not to be trifled with." Zhang Mubai groaned inwardly. This move of Chao Guofeng's was exceptionally beautiful. In just a short while, he had gained 6 strong supporters. This increased the difficulty of his plan by several times. With such strength, even if any one of the 3 holy lands came out, they might not be able to shake him. But Zhang Mubai would not let go just because of this. The misty mansion was afraid that the 3 holy lands would use this disciple to suppress the misty mansion 100 years later. How could he not hope to use this disciple as a foundation to allow the 3 holy lands to shake off the shadow of the misty mansion? Free and natural physique. The physique of the 9 Nether First Young Master, the achievements of the 9 Nether First Young Master. Thinking of this, Jean Mubai was so agitated that his chest was about to explode. No matter what, he would not let go. With the plan set, these few old men did not even bother to eat. They simply paid the money and returned to the Chen manor. As for Jun Moxie, he was protected in the middle by the 7 holy emperors of the Misty Mansion. Like the stars surrounding the moon, they followed behind. The Holy Emperor opened the way, the Holy Emperor held the rear, and there were also the Holy Emperor's bodyguards on the left and right. Even the 9 nether first young master from 10,000 years ago would have sighed in admiration at the level of Jun Dashao's current status and treatment. Little did he know that the 8 holy emperors, including Jean Mubai, were also secretly observing him. The 8 experts saw that the young man was surrounded by their auras. Although he did not know what was going on, he was still composed. His movements did not show any signs of panic. Under the guidance of the 8 saint emperors, he calmed down and became calm and reserved. Extraordinary indeed, as expected of the free and natural physique. The 8 holy emperors' evaluation of Jun Dashao had risen by a few notches. One had to know that the aura of the 8 holy emperors, even in the Tian Fa forest, was enough to scare away all the beasts. How powerful was that? Although they did not show any malicious intent to suppress him, under the pressure of such a majestic aura, it was not something that any ordinary person could withstand. The 8 of them returned to the Chen residence, each with their own ulterior motives. Jun Moxie, the fake Super Xuanzang meat, was arranged to stay in a room in the middle of a small courtyard that the Chen family had specially prepared for the holy emperors of the Misty Mansion. And Chao Guofeng was staying next door. Holy Emperor Chao obviously could not wait to accept a disciple and pass on his skills. But seeing the faint hesitation in Jun Moxie's heart, although he forced himself to calm down, he still couldn't hide the faint trace of helplessness. Chao Guofeng couldn't help but feel a sense of tenderness in his heart. Alas, in the end, he's still a worldly traveler. He's too young and hasn't seen the world, so his confidence is slightly lacking. Seeing the Chen family's magnificence, his mentality is actually a little unstable. I have to let him get used to it first. Tomorrow, I will let the head of the Chen family and the others come over to greet me. First, to show my superior status, and second, to dispel the anxiety and fear in his heart. He is the future disciple of the 7 of us. A mere Chen family is nothing. Letting them entertain us is giving them a lot of face. After thinking for a while, he comforted Jun Dashao with a few words and chatted amiably for a while, making Jun Moxie feel as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. He even used his supreme divine power to create a special aura, helping Jun Moxie to calm his fear. When everything was over, seeing that Jun Moxie's mood was much calmer, the 7 holy emperors went back to their rooms to meditate and practice. At their level of cultivation, sleeping or not had long since become a trivial matter of no importance. Moreover, in the hearts of the 7 of them, they were definitely more excited than Jun Moxie. However, they didn't notice that after they left, a trace of cunning flashed in the eyes of this prospective disciple, as well as the brilliance of a conspiracy. This was really a heaven-sent opportunity to sow discord. If this prospective disciple of theirs suddenly died, what would happen? Jun Moxie was looking forward to it. On the surface, the 7 holy emperors went back to their own rooms to meditate, but in reality, they had already started to discuss in secret. The more they talked, the more excited they became. They had even started to discuss how to build the foundation for this precious disciple when they returned to the Misty Mansion, which kind of elixir to take first, and according to the characteristics of the 7 people's techniques, who would be the first to teach, then who would follow up, who would strengthen when he reached a certain stage, what kind of method would he use to improve himself. They even discussed using the heaven and earth treasure of the misty illusory manor, the rainbow fruit, to cleanse his meridians and marrow at a certain period of time, to create an unparalleled expert in the shortest time possible. One must know that the higher the cultivation of the disciple, the earlier he finished his apprenticeship, the greater the glory. With this disciple, it would not be a problem for the misty mansion to completely suppress the three Holy Land. Even surpassing their ancestors was not an extravagant hope. Their real goal should be to work hard to catch up to the level of the 9 nether first young master. That was not something impossible. The 7 of them became more and more excited as they discussed, and each of them even came up with a grand blueprint. Thinking of the future, the 7 of them could not help but feel excited. In the pugilistic world, a talented youth who wanted to find a good master needed luck. But for a top-notch expert to find a disciple that was completely suitable to his liking, that was an even more difficult thing. Perhaps these few holy emperors did not know, and could not be sure if there were people with the free and natural physique in this world. But June Moxie knew that the 9 nether first young master was not the only one with the free and natural physique in the past 10,000 years. Just how many geniuses had been buried in this world since ancient times? No one knew. If all of them were added up, it would probably be an army of 1,000,000. How many geniuses did not have any opportunities and became farmers, merchants, or even poor to the point of death? Talent scouts were rare, but how could 1,000-li steed be common? The greatest significance of the two was that neither could be dispensed with. Time passed quietly. There were no stars or moon in the sky, but it was already the darkest period before dawn. In at most half an hour the sky would be bright. The true darkness before dawn, and also the darkest moment before dawn. At this moment, Chao Guofeng and the rest all felt a trace of abnormality at the same time. Although the 7 of them were only conversing in secret, their nerves were all stretched taut. That was the legendary free and natural physique. Since Jean Mubai coveted it so much, how could he be willing to suffer such a huge loss? There was no guarantee that he would not play any trick. So while the 7 of them were conversing, they maintained their vigilance. Seeing that the night was about to pass, and the dawn was about to arrive, just when everyone was about to heave a sigh of relief, something strange happened. An extremely subtle sound of the wind drifted past. Even if one listened carefully, one would only think that it was a natural sound of the wind. But in this night, the 7 of them could be said to be extremely familiar with the movements of the outside world. This seemingly natural gust of wind blew past, but it was very sudden, and it had already reached the courtyard. The movement was really fast. If it was any ordinary person, how would they be able to hide from the eyes and ears of the holy emperor experts? Not to mention the courtyard that was just inches away. Even if it was 100 zhang away, they would have already been detected. The cultivation of this person was definitely not below any of the 7 holy emperors. Jean Mubai. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.